Good evening, everyone. Oh, it's such a pleasure seeing you here and watching you interact with the agencies and companies downstairs. And that is the purpose of this event, the One Brooklyn Resource Fair. Hello, my name is Nan Blackshear, and I'm the director of the Borough President's Constituent Assistance Center. And I will be your moderator for this evening. But first, we're going to kick off this program by having a wonderful welcome by a distinguished colleague of mine, Andrew Gunardes, our counsel to the Brooklyn Borough President. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nan. Good evening, everybody. How are we all doing? Doing good? Good. It's good to see so many of you out here today for the One Brooklyn Resource Fair. My name is Andrew Gunardes, and I am the General Counsel for Borough President Eric Adams, who unfortunately could not be here today. And on his behalf and on behalf of everyone here at Borough Hall, just want to say thank you so much for coming out tonight. I think you're in for a big treat. If you haven't realized it already, we have great resources available downstairs throughout the evening, and you're going to hear from a great panel, a group of panels here tonight about resources available for your community organizations, your block associations, your neighborhood groups, your public safety watches. Every group you can imagine, I know, is represented in this room here tonight. Before we continue, I just want to thank our evening's partners. We are partnering tonight with the Center for New York City Neighborhoods, the Fire Department of New York, NextDoor, and New York Life, and we thank them for working with us on this event this evening. The most important thing about tonight, and about the work that, not that we do, but that you do in your neighborhoods, is that by working together, by working with the resources that we're making available tonight, and by you working together with other groups, with our office, with other partners throughout the community, we are going to be building One Brooklyn, block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood, community by community, so that groups working in Bay Ridge will be hopefully working with groups down in Brownsville, and groups in Canarsie can be working with groups in Cobble Hill. And only when we're all working together as One Brooklyn are we going to make Brooklyn strong. And that's the most important thing that I think we should all remember as we sit here this evening. Because without that, we have nothing. And I think everyone here knows that. You know what it takes to build an organization, to build a community group, person by person, neighbor by neighbor, into something that's really strong, really dynamic, and really accomplishes what it sets out to do, which is improve your neighborhood. So with that, I thank you all for being here, and welcome to Borough Hall. And I know you're going to have a great evening in store. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Andrew, for that wonderful welcome. I just wanted to let you know that we are looking to have a wonderful panel discussion. But first, I'd like to have a slight departure from our program. We have Andrew Brockman from the Department of Consumer Affairs. He'd like to make a very, very brief announcement to all who are present here this evening. Thank you, Andrew. This is our second Andrew.
Thank you, thank you. It's great to be here tonight, and I just wanted to come from Consumer Affairs because a big thing that we're working on right now is the paid sick leave law and letting people know about it. You know, it's one thing to pass a law that allows up to 5 days of paid sick leave for almost all New Yorkers. It's another thing for the New Yorkers to actually know about it so they could use it, because if they don't know about it, then, you know, then we can't enforce it. We can't do our job as a city of making sure that the law is enforced. So one of the things we're doing, and it's a big event, the mayor is going to be there, and we hope to get over 1,000 volunteers from across the city. And it's going to be a day of action on July 16th. And what we're asking from people is very simple. It's very easy. It's just 2 hours of your time during the morning or evening rush. We're going to be at subway stops throughout the city, so the subway stop near you, because we want people to tell their neighbors, to tell their family, to tell the people in their own communities about this law. So I have with me an iPad, and I'm going to be going around seeing if people could sign up, and it would be wonderful if you came up to me and signed up, because It's really, we're making this as simple as possible for people, but also as effective as possible, because we really think that if over 1,000 people come out to tell their neighbors during those rush hours, during those specific subway stop locations, then we will have a huge effect. We'll be distributing hundreds of thousands of pieces of literature on paid sick leave, and we'll really, really make sure that this law gets enforced and implemented, and everyone who needs it is protected under the law. So hope to talk to you each soon, and it's wonderful to be here tonight. Thank you so much.
Okay, so now I'd like to take time to get us back on the program. Our next person will be our keynote speaker, Mr. Kevin Cummings. He is the Managing Director for the Mayor's Office, New York City Service. And he's going to bring that message that speaks to the theme of this event, which is helping hands build a successful community. Kevin?
Good evening, everyone. So I am the first speaker not named Andrew. Hopefully that doesn't disturb things. And I'm going to apologize in advance if I'm a little long-winded. It's really warm outside. It's comfortable in here, and I want to stay as long as I can. So I'm going to apologize in advance. But all jokes aside, my name is Kevin Cummings. I'm the Managing Director of NYC Service, as Nan said. And I've been with NYC Service for about 4 years. NYC Service was founded in 2009, actually, during the last administration, in response to President Obama's call to service. So essentially, President Obama said, what can communities across America do to enrich themselves and to make their communities better? And our office was founded to figure out how we could leverage volunteers to do that. Now, we've actually extended our mission to promoting volunteerism, engaging New Yorkers in service, building volunteer capacity, and mobilizing the power of volunteers to address New York City's greatest needs. Interestingly, those greatest needs develop, as you know, many of you are serving those greatest needs, develop and change sometimes day to day, month to month. So our office wants to ensure that we are, one, providing support to individuals who are meeting those needs, but two, helping to create a larger community of folks who can serve. I believe it was Oprah Winfrey who said that essentially we only are able to vote every 4 years or so. But when we volunteer, we actually get an opportunity to vote every day about the community we want to live in. And I think that that's true. If you are extending yourself and using your skills for good, you can actually help to engage other people. So our office has 5 overarching goals, which I actually want to share with you. The first, just to give you an idea of sort of what we're doing. The first is to promote volunteerism and help New Yorkers connect to service opportunities. So the first way that you can do that, actually, and before I leave, I'll be remiss in not saying it, is that if you were to call 311 and say, I would like to volunteer, that would actually be enough. You'd be connected to our office. We actually have a website. It's part of the city's website. It's nyc.gov/service. And you can actually use that website to find opportunities in any number of impact areas. You can actually search volunteer opportunities by zip code, by date. Several different variables that you could use to find something that is of interest to you. Interestingly, folks use service for a lot of different opportunities. I know many of you are leveraging service to improve your community, but there are also individuals who use service as a pathway to work, who are looking to develop new opportunities and new skills, expose themselves to new sectors. So again, it's an opportunity for you to use any one of those interests to search for an opportunity. Individuals or entities who would like to post opportunities, the only qualification is that you be a 501c3, so a nonprofit organization. If you're not, you would just call our office and we'd figure out a way that we could have one sponsor the work that you're doing. So that is sort of the cutoff that we have there. But we have an opportunity through partnerships that we have for individuals who are not 501c3s, but are just essentially an organized group or a slightly organized group of interested individuals to connect to some of our nonprofits that will support your work. To give you an example of some of those, one of them that we work with the Citizens Committee to Advance New York City, which I'm sure many of you may be familiar with. So that is goal number 1, again, is just promoting volunteerism. We also have, for those of you who like social media, and I know I look really young, but I just don't know all the names of them. So I know Facebook, but we have the picture thing as well, and the others. So Instagram, thank you. It's a picture of a camera, but I can never get it right. So Instagram, we also have a Twitter feed, et cetera. So for those of you who want to follow and connect, please do that, but we also want to make sure we're celebrating your work too. Goal number 2 is targeting volunteers to addressing the city's greatest needs. So we align ourselves with mayoral priorities. Obviously, those are going to span the realm of environment, health, education, emergency preparedness, disaster services. So those are just an idea of some of the things that you can see. So we want to make sure that we're channeling individuals towards addressing those greatest needs. The third, which is fairly new this year for those of you familiar with our office, is elevating youth service, specifically as a development and leadership strategy in our city. So we are looking to engage more young people. For those of you who've interacted with our website in the past, most of our opportunities, just because of liability, are involving 16 and up. However, we've always had volunteer opportunities that engage youth in their communities and across the city in not only engaging each other, but engaging other intergenerational activities, but also other community development opportunities. So please look forward to those growing as well, and if that's an interest, please make sure you connect with our office. Goal number 4 is advancing strategic volunteer management in community organizations and public agencies. So for those of you who are representing nonprofits, if you're looking to launch a nonprofit and thinking about how you can build capacity, our office wants to be able to be a resource to you in figuring out how you can leverage volunteers towards extending your mission. Our goal is not obviously to displace people, but in the same sense, we want to make sure that we're celebrating resources, and resources being people. And then 5, measuring volunteer outcomes and output. So this is probably the part that for those of you who deal with grants or get funds or are looking for funds don't like, is the metrics piece. But it's really important for me to be able to say that we're able to leverage and engage more than 3 million New Yorkers in doing service in their community. So we want to make sure that we can count what we're doing so we can help you in celebrating it. Interestingly, as I looked at the resource fair, I was thinking that there's probably a table missing, which would be a really hard table to have, which is the table with all of you. You are New York City's greatest resource. For us, when we're looking to volunteer and looking to make a difference, we have to engage the community in doing that. 1, it's the responsible thing to do. 2, it helps us to engage strategically the folks who are most informed about the work that needs to be done. And 3, it makes it sustainable. Luckily, with the leadership we had before and now, we're able to continue that work through an administration because the challenges still remain and there's still work to do in those communities. So even when I finish speaking this evening, I know that there's going to be something new that develops. There may be a new idea or new opportunity. We want to make sure that we're connecting you and connecting others to your cause to keep that going. So with that, we have 20 different initiatives in our office. I'm going to name a couple because I think that they may resonate here, and some of you may be a part of them, and I just want to orient you to the type of work that we do. So one of them is Million Trees NYC. Million Trees NYC is an initiative that we have in partnership with the New York City Parks, as well as several other agencies, to green New York City, decrease the carbon footprint, helping to make the city cooler. So we have actually been in communities and reforesting parks, et cetera. That is actually an activity that hopefully some of you have already partaken in. You can actually call 311 and have a tree planted on your property or in your community. But we also have youth who've helped to reforest parks, et cetera. Another one of our initiatives that's fairly popular and actually fairly robust this year is Love Your Block. Love Your Block is an initiative that we have in partnership with Citizens Committee to Advance New York City, Department of Sanitation, Department of Transportation, and also, I'm forgetting one. Don't tell them I forgot them. But with those 3 city agencies, what we're actually looking to do is leverage their resources for communities who are looking to engage community members in enriching their community. So they may be neighborhood cleanups, removing graffiti, those things. We actually provide a small grant to support that work and actually utilize you as the resource in engaging those communities to get individuals, 1, to be involved, build community, know who each other are, 2, make a difference in those communities, and 3, help to sustain that difference. There's something very empowering in having young people and other folks, leaders in the community who can, 1, define leadership across generations, but 2, plant a tree or make a change in the community that everyone who walks past it can experience both actively and passively. So that's the kind of work we do. I hope that does a good job of orienting you to our office. I wanted to mention one quick thing. We have an initiative that is very unique and speaks to service at a larger scale, not just in Brooklyn or in the city, but nationally, which is an AmeriCorps program. If you're familiar with AmeriCorps, it's called NYC Civic Corps. The NYC Civic Corps program recruits adult volunteers, we say professional volunteers, to volunteer for 10 months They receive a very small stipend. It is not a paycheck. It is more a reward for their sacrifice. But after the completion of that 10 months of service, the individuals in that program earn a scholarship of $5,350 that they can use towards college, towards accredited institutions, et cetera. The prerequisites for our program are that you have a college degree by the time you start, which the start is September 4th. But in terms of who qualifies in terms of age, I will say we start as young as college graduates, which would be 21, and then as experienced as Infinity. So anyone here who's Infinity should apply. There is no age cap. Yep, there we go, we have one gentleman here who's included. But again, we don't have an age cap. Just to kind of give you some statistics, our youngest core member this year is 22, and our most experienced core member is 72. So again, in terms of range, these individuals are working in nonprofit organizations and city agencies, helping them to better leverage volunteers. So I will close with, again, stating that New York City's greatest resource is you, and the charge that I have for you after you leave here is for you to continue inspiring your communities and continuing to get individuals to help you. One person can make a difference. The greatest way they can make a difference is getting others to do the same. So I'm hoping that I do that today. I want to commend you guys. I know that a lot of you are representing tenant associations, nonprofit organizations, representing yourselves and your community. I want to thank you for the work that you do. I know that volunteers don't always get credit, so I want to say thank you as well. And I want to wish everyone Godspeed, and I hope that you remained cool while I was speaking. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kevin. As you know, Brooklyn Borough President is a very, very strong supporter of volunteerism, and he's starting to lead a charge in regards to volunteerism in Brooklyn. So we will be talking with New York City Service. Yeah, that's quite all right. That's why I'm here. So I'm going to say that because in each one of your folders is a form. The form is, for those who do not have access to the internet, that form is for you to fill out if you are interested in volunteering in Brooklyn Borough Hall or volunteering in your community or any community, or maybe you just say any neighborhood in Brooklyn. So you can basically put down your hours, your choices, all of the above, whatever you like to do. Let us know, and please leave that form off. Completed form at our Brooklyn Borough Hall table downstairs on the first floor. Also, for those who love going on the internet, for those of you who love going on the internet, there's a form attached on, thank you. There's a form attached on your folder on the right-hand side. It is a link to a document that goes straight to a Google Doc that the Borough President looks at from actually quite often. So I engage those who like to go on the internet, please do so. All right, without further ado, I'd like to continue with the program. I would like to introduce Ms. Caroline Nagy from the Center for New York City Neighborhoods. She is the Director of Community Outreach. Caroline, would you like to take it away?
Sure, thanks. Can everyone hear me? All right, how's everyone doing tonight? Great, good to hear. I'd like to thank first Nan for that, and also to the Office of the Borough President for organizing today's event. As Nan said, my name is Caroline Nagy. I'm the Policy Manager at the Center for New York City Neighborhood. It's okay. And what we do at the Center for New York City Neighborhoods is we help homeowners. Mostly, we help homeowners who are at risk of foreclosure or who are even in foreclosure, and we also do a lot of work rebuilding from Sandy. So thinking of today's theme of strengthening communities, events like tonight's One Borough Resource Fair really show the strength of people working in organizations, all of the excellent presenters tonight, and of course everyone here who came. There's so many resources and so many people who really care about making Brooklyn a wonderful place to live. Unfortunately, the foreclosure crisis that brought about our nation's Great Recession and economic downturn really poses one of the greatest challenges that we have here in Brooklyn to our communities' health and well-being. And in particular, I'm talking about some of the communities that are hardest hit by the foreclosure crisis in Brooklyn. That's East New York, that's Canarsie, Bushwick, and also Brownsville to an extent. And really, we've all lived through the last 6 years, and we've all seen, the devastation caused by the Great Recession. But, foreclosure is also extremely devastating, both on an individual level. It's extremely traumatic to feel like you might be at risk of losing your home. And also at the community level, we know when there's foreclosures on a block, it can really lead to a lot of problems for neighbors in terms of health and safety if the building becomes advantaged. And we also know that it can reduce property values. So today, while the economic recovery is continuing in some ways, we can even see that here in Brooklyn. Some of the construction sites that were stalled, like in downtown, some of them are now, they're under construction again. There's some recovery happening, but what we know in the communities that have really been struck by the foreclosure crisis, many of which are low and moderate income, mostly communities of color, this is still, this is not over. This is still a huge amount of challenge and huge amounts of pain for the individuals who are affected by it. In fact, foreclosure is actually on the rise right now. We saw an 84% increase in foreclosure filings in New York from 2012 to 2013. So it's not going away, and it still really requires a big community response. Today, there's about 80,000 homeowners who are in the court process dealing with foreclosure and the stress it causes every day. The good news is that for many of these homeowners, they ultimately will not lose their homes. And that's where organizations like the Center for New York City Neighborhoods really come in. We're here to help, and we oversee a network of foreclosure prevention services like counseling and legal services or lawyers for people who are at risk of losing their home, either at risk of going into foreclosure or if they're already in foreclosure. And it's really easy for anyone in New York who needs these services to get connected. All you have to do is dial 311, and that actually connects you right to, just say, foreclosure or mortgage, and they'll connect you to the Center for New York City Neighborhoods call center, and we'll help you get an appointment at a community organization in your neighborhood where you can get services for free. We also provide, through our mortgage assistance program, zero-interest loans for homeowners who had struck on hard times and have accrued some arrears in their mortgage, some missed payments basically. By providing them a zero-interest loan, they're able to cover their missed payments and then get into a modification so that they can stay in their home and get out of foreclosure. In 6 years, we've served over 30,000 homeowners, and what we found is that the sooner a homeowner gets help, they're much more likely to be able to stay in their home. Basically, the longer that they wait and they go without services, the worse off they often are. But unfortunately, sometimes when homeowners get in trouble with their mortgages, they feel ashamed and they feel isolated. And they really, what's worse, they really don't even know where to go for help or where to turn. And this is especially bad because in some of these communities that have really been hit by the foreclosure crisis, there are a number of bad actors that target these people, go after them when they're really desperate for help. These scammers, they make false promises, they charge money for phony services or fake modifications that don't even exist. And this really puts people who fall victim to this in a even worse situation. They're already in trouble with their mortgage. Now they're out even more money because they paid the scammer, $2,000 to help them get a modification that never came through. Even worse, they tend to be even more behind because they haven't been, they haven't got the help they need. So this is where it's really important to have strong communities that can support these homeowners. So for example, through our network of service providers, we have some really great local institutions in neighborhoods throughout New York City that can provide free services. So I don't know if any of them are here tonight, but we have great partners in NHS, Pride Area Civic Council, Legal Aid, South Brooklyn Legal Services. really all throughout Brooklyn and all neighborhoods, providing help in different languages. And what's really important is that we provide services for free. And really, the truth is, no one should ever be paying money for help with their mortgages. There are free services available, and actually, in most cases, it's illegal to charge someone up front for services. So if someone wants money up front, they're probably doing something that's not legitimate. So I know many of the people, almost everyone we talk to here, fortunately, is not in the situation where they need our services. But many of you might know people who could benefit from it, and that's really where reaching out to neighbors and friends who could use some help is really important. I mean, the easiest thing to do is tell them to call 311, and then they'll get connected to the Center for New York City Neighborhoods, and we can help them find the services that they need. We really have great resources in this community, and the type of organizations that help homeowners is just one of them, as are all of you. And I think by working together, we can really make a difference and stem the tide of foreclosures in our communities. Thank you.
Okay, as we get ready to go to the next portion of our program, I'm going to kind of change the order a little bit. And I know you're looking forward to the wonderful presentation by Joe Barbieri, but I think I'm going to have the next person to go up actually will be a peer. For those of you who have block associations or group, we have Miss Gail Dixon from the East 49th and East 48th Street Block Association of Lenox, Linden, Clarkson, and Schenectady. Miss Dixon.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nan. Good evening to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to see so many of Block Association representatives and presidents here as well. I am Gail Dixon, and the blocks comprise of 6.5 that I'm the president for. One of the things that I was asked to really get into, what is a block association? Many of the block associations only do one thing, and that is to give a block party. Am I correct? Am I correct? Okay, thank you very much. For the ones that have said no, there may be other things that your block do at certain times of the year. Okay. What I'm getting into right now is that when you request a permit for a block party, we call it Friends and Family Day. It really is getting the minds together, working the minds together. We all get together as one, and we really do what we have to make sure that everyone is involved. For some reason, the permits apply differently in different areas. Why I'm saying this is that in East Flatbush, where we are, there are 8 to 10 block parties that take place on a weekend. There are over 100 block parties that take place for the summer. Many that don't receive permits, it's 1 out of 3 reasons. The submission of your application went in too late. It should be put in 3 months in advance. When the year begins, you can put in your application at least by the latest, I should say, March, which gives you March, April, May, June. If the application arrives late and you get denied, you can always make a call and find out what is there another available date. Another reason can be if there's been an incident on your block, but your block is not directly involved in that incident, but your block is 3 corners away from where that happened, you can also get denied a permit. We were denied a permit because there was a shooting 3 blocks away from where we are. However, calls were made, and a turnaround happened where we were able to have our block event last year. And that's only because we had to identify that we are East 49th, but we are not close to Tilden Avenue. We are far away from Tilden, so we were able to get our permit. The third reason being, if there was an incident in the block party at the said time, be it a shooting, be it disrespect to the officers in your neighborhood, any fights or what have you on the block, your block will be denied a permit. So actually there are 3 categories that you look at when you get denied a permit. But just don't say, I'm not going to have it. Still try to get a permit so that you can have your friends and family day or / block party. A block association consists of homeowners, residents, tenants, renters, businesses in the neighborhood. It's not just comprising of the area that you're in and the people. You have to involve everyone else in the block association. When you're sending out flyers, for the ones who do flyers, if you go on the internet, you actually send out the businesses. You send out, there are many people that rent, which we call renters. They are the residents, they are the homeowners. All of them comprise of the entire block association. Having a block association has its perks. Actually, it is the lifeline of a community. What that means is, if something happens and you're in a block association, you can be identified as, I'm calling from this block association. You would find that the attention span would be a little bit more for certain offices, whereas if you're really not affiliated with a block association, then you have to give the entire description of what's going on and what have you. Once you identify the block that you're from and people are familiar with that block, they'll be able to help you a little bit more. Forming a block association means that an executive board is necessary, very necessary. You must have an executive secretary, must have first and second vice presidents, a treasurer. The whole composite of a block association is the executive board where decisions are made. Besides that, we must always try to involve the youth in the community in the block association. Let's try to pull them in the sense of giving them responsibilities to do something. I look around this room, and from what I'm seeing here, let's just teach the youth about block associations so that they can take over after we are gone. In the sense, we'll let them see how it's run, show them what to do. We all make mistakes, but bring them in and let them see what they have to do. Give them responsibilities. It's something that's important. Give them responsibilities. They make an error, you can always help them. Okay? Thirdly, block association members, dues are a requisite. Why dues are a requisite? Because of the fact that if someone expires in the block association, if someone is in the hospital in the block association, you can always write a check to the family if someone expires. Now we're talking about the offspring, we're talking about husband or wife of the member. A check should be given to them. I don't know how many block associations, what their whole bylaws are, but our bylaws are that if someone expires and it's a member, it's the husband, the wife, the son, the daughter, the immediate family, we give them a check. Dues are important. I see people coming to meetings, every meeting, and don't pay dues. You pay your dues, we are able to do many more things when you pay your dues. You don't pay your dues, we have issues where we have to ask officials, we have to ask community offices, we have to call on different people to get financial help. One other thing, fundraisers are very good to do. Doing a fundraiser, you would have your own treasury, you can make You can do different things. You can go on trips, but involve everyone in it. So besides the block party, you can do fundraisers, you can go on trips, you can enter the greenest block in Brooklyn. It's very important everyone becomes as one, hands-on, they're able to get into the toil and do different things. So one of the things that I say about block associations, it is the lifeline of the community and in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dixon. Just to let you know that Ms. Dixon's Block Association has been in existence for 10 years, and they have been very successful in holding events and doing work in the community. And what she spoke about in terms of Block Association also applies to homeowner associations and condo boards and co-op boards coming together basically for the good of the community, the building. So at this point, I'm going to move the program along. I'm now going to bring it back to Mr. Joe Barbieri of NextDoor. Mr. Barbieri is going to do his presentation about NextDoor Brooklyn, basically tools to build stronger and safer neighborhoods. Joe?
Thank you so much, Nan, and thank you to the Borough President's Office for having us here. We are going to go through a very brief presentation. I'll tell you all about NextDoor, and so my name is Joe Barbiero. I'm with NextDoor.com. I'm here with my colleague, Ty Allen, and we're here because basically, we want to let you know how to use NextDoor.com as a tool for your block associations, for your tenant associations, for your civic associations, because I agree strongly with what Mr. Cummings said earlier about the fact that the greatest resource is really you all, and that's what NextDoor.com relies on. So what is NextDoor? NextDoor is a free, private social network for your neighborhood, and we're a little bit different than the other organizations here because we're a resource like the other organizations here, but we rely on our members, our users of the website, to have it be a tool for anything that you'd like to use it for, and that could be organizing block parties, doing crime watch, finding a lost dog, but our website really is what you make of it, and you get what you put into it. So, social networks in a neighborhood, and type of social networks I'm talking about are like Gail Dixon's Block Association. It's been shown that these types of organizations in neighborhoods actually lower crime, improve public health, and raise test scores. I'm sure it's not surprising to you all who are already parts of these organizations, but the facts and research really backs this up. So just a very quick show of hands, how many folks in here know more than just a couple of your neighbors? Okay, well, you're way ahead of average, and you're way ahead of what studies are showing, because amazingly, only 29% of Americans know even a few of their neighbors, and 28% know none of their neighbors by name at all. And so the purpose of NextDoor is really to bring a sense of community back to the neighborhood that a lot of you already have in your neighborhoods, but not all neighborhoods have. So the three main components of NextDoor, the fact that it's private, that when you log into the website, anything that you post on the website can't be viewed by anyone from outside your neighborhood. It's local, which means it's only folks in your neighborhood, and you can choose to post either into a 3-block radius around your home, which would probably correspond with your block association, or you can post into all of Clinton Hill or all of Bed-Stuy, any of the larger sections of Brooklyn. And the third important thing is that it's useful. And I'll show you a graph of how folks are using NextDoor. People are planning events like block parties, giving recommendations for local businesses. There's local businesses that are posting classified ads on there, community issues, crime and safety, and everything else from finding a lost dog to, could be anything else. And the breakdowns, they're pretty even for community issues and crime and safety, but like I said, this website really is up to the users to decide how NextDoor best works for you. So I'll just show a slide with the actual website and what it looks like. You'll see that once you log in, you have the categories on the left-hand side. So when someone makes a post similar to a neighborhood bulletin board, you could either choose to post into classifieds, crime and safety, free items, lost and found, or recommendations. And then as an added benefit to something like a listserv or a Yahoo group, all the posts that you make are actually categorized, so it makes it easier to go back through the posts and find that original email. Makes it a lot easier than sifting through hundreds of old emails. And I'll finish just by saying that we'd love for you to join us on this website. We have community websites set up for every neighborhood throughout Brooklyn, and it's free, and we're here to answer questions for you, and we'd love to get you on the site. Last thing I want to say is that my colleague Ty Allen has planned a concert this weekend in Fort Greene Park that NextDoor is sponsoring, and it's from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. this Saturday. There's going to be soul, rock, jazz, and hip hop, so it's going to be a great time, and that's a free event. Okay, thank you, everybody.
I don't know about you, but that party sounds like fun. I'm going to see if I can try to go and shake a leg there, too. Now, in the interest of time, we've gotten very delayed in our program, and I apologize for that. So I've been kind of speeding through our program. But at this time is a very important part of the program, so we want to take the time. If there's anybody at this point who have any questions for the panelists or myself, please feel free to ask. I have Ms. Phillips on this side, and I have my Deputy Director, Tanya Hill, in the back on the other side. So I'm going to start on this side, my right. You raised your hand.
Yes. Oh, you can hear me.
Hello.
Hello. My name is Louise Manning, and I wanted to ask the NextDoor person, Mr. Joe. You said that do you let the people know of any, what you call it, mental or sex offenders in the neighborhood? Do you monitor that also?
That's a very good question, and I'm glad you brought it up, because the only people that we do not allow on the website are registered sex offenders. And when someone goes to sign up for NextDoor, their name and address are cross-checked with the sex offender registry, and if there's a registered sex offender at that address, it actually won't let you register.
Well, my question is also, do you notify your neighbors?
No, we do not notify the neighbors.
Okay, thank you.
Next. Okay. We want everybody to hear. Okay.
Yeah, how do you network with other people? How do they know that you've got something posted there and to look at this place, and how does it all work?
So are you asking how you're tied into your particular neighborhood?
Yes, and how do they know to look there? I mean,
Yeah, gotcha. Good question. When you sign up, you actually sign up with your real address, which is not viewable to other folks on the website, but because you sign up with your real address, it'll put you into a website with only your neighbors, and that's how it works.
do I get to see who they are, or
You get to see who they are, but you don't get to see their exact addresses.
you get to see their emails as well, or you don't?
No.
So just the names?
Names, and so I live in Clinton Hill, and it lists me as Joe Barbero on Willoughby Avenue.
So,
And that's all I can
if
see.
you expand out to a geographical area, then you get to know who's on this next door? Is that, how does that work?
Yeah, you could either post into a 3-block radius around your home. We like to say it's the people who you would like to ask to borrow a cup of sugar, and if anybody does that anymore. Or you can post into all of Clinton Hill, all of Fort Greene, all of Bed-Stuy, and we say those are the people you'd want to reach out to if your dog got out.
Okay. Anyone on this side? No? Okay. Tanya, we'll take this.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, some people, I spoke to a guy downstairs saying that NextDoor is the anti-Facebook or the anti-MySpace or the anti-Twitter. How do you get by that?
Okay. I'm sorry. Was that for you?
Yeah, that was
Okay.
for Joseph.
Okay.
And
Yeah, they say there's anti-Facebook, anti-MySpace, anti-Twitter.
Well, it's not really anti-anything, but the difference between NextDoor and other websites is that really it's about people getting together in real life and not just talking online. It's about planning real things, and not necessarily just block parties, but doing community service and things like that, things in real life.
Yeah, what about calling up agencies to build better homes for people with disabilities?
Well, you'd be able to do lots of other things on the website as well.
Yeah, because I was born with albinism from Jamaica, and technically, they still consider us as cursed, born from the devil. I don't know what's going. I don't know if it still goes on today.
I didn't hear that last part.
No, I mean, I'm sorry about that. I was born with albinism from Jamaica, and to this day, they still consider us, the albino community, as cursed, born from the devil. Like we have magical powers and stuff, and we are none of that. Can we post that on our site too?
Yeah, I think we're having trouble hearing.
All right. I was born with albinism from Jamaica, and to this day, I read about albinism on Wikimedia. They still consider us as cursed, born from Satan. I want to know if I can post that on the NextDoor website soon.
Oh, you want to post it on what website?
The NextDoor website, because the albino community needs to be heard also.
Okay, I think that's something that we could discuss after the meeting. We can talk more about it. So at this point, I'm going to ask my deputy director to take over the mic. We'll talk later. We'll talk later,
All right,
okay?
thanks.
And Nicole, thank you.
Hi. My name is Demetrius Mills. I'm the Block Association President of Clausen and Fulgate. And there's a lot of these groups next door, Clexi, which is Clausen and Lexington. Everybody seems to be establishing these little Google groups that only the people within the group can talk to each other. And to me, I think it's kind of an isolation of the community, because if you're not part of that group, you really don't know what's going on in your neighborhood, right? So how do you expand it in such a way that you're communicating to everyone? I know you can't communicate to the world, but that you can communicate with the different other groups so that the message get out across the whole community. Everybody doesn't have internet services, right? A lot of seniors don't get on computers, but they would like to know what's going on in their neighborhood too. And if they're not part of that, they're kind of left out. So how do you deal with that?
That's a great question, and I feel the same way about the Google groups, because it seems like you'd have to know someone who started them to get in, and that's kind of the opposite of what NextDoor is about, because it's open to absolutely anybody in the neighborhood. And I don't know half my neighbors on my NextDoor site, but we're connected because we all live on the same block. And so whether it's a block association or just individuals joining, everyone is welcome.
Are there any more questions? We have one on way in the back over there in the corner. You thought I didn't see you, huh?
Actually, I have 3 questions. One is, how could we go about getting security cameras in your neighborhood? And the second one is, how can you go about, with the trees that are hazardous that might fall on your property? How can we go about that? And third is about the pavements, sinking pavements in the streets where, they wait until maybe a car or somebody have an accident. Can we go about that?
Okay, I didn't hear the third question. Could you repeat it?
The first one was,
Right.
how can we go about getting security cameras in the neighborhood?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Second one was about the trees, the ones that are hazard, like in the front,
Right.
that belongs to the city,
Right.
that you call and they don't get back to you within the next year or 2,
Okay.
and also the ones in the backyard. How can we go about that? And also the pavement in the street that's sinking in, that they're waiting for like an accident or somebody to fall in with their car.
Okay. All of the questions, it's one number, which is 311. Now, even if I know you would call, what you can do is have the entire block call every day, in the sense of 5 do it one day, the next day 4 can do it, the next day 3 can do it, the next day. Continuously keep doing that, they will come. Because we've had that issue where I've made a report about the pruning of the trees, issues with the pavement in front of the house where it's lifted up because the tree roots damage the plumbing system. And there's a lot of problems people have with their gutters and stuff like that because of this issue. So, like I said, not just you, 4 one day, 5 another day, 3 another day, and you have to follow up. Even with a complaint number, you have to follow up, but as many people that call, they come. I've had that experience with that. The security cameras. In our financial, I should say in our treasury, we matched it in the sense of I contacted official offices and I told them we would like to have security cameras, and they told me they would match what we have. So in a situation like this, if you have $500, you have $1,000 to go towards those cameras. They would then say, okay, it depends on which office you call now in your district, they would match it. And in that way, you should be able to get your cameras through SW24. They're very good. or you can do it otherwise. Okay? Mm-hmm. Huh? Oh, about the pavement, the same thing applies with the pavement as well.
Oh,
You
okay.
have to let them know the damage that's being done in front of the pavement and what's going to happen there. They will come and they will put a sign and they would fix it, but just don't call once or twice. Let them know that you've made the report. It does take a while, but if you continue to call them, of course, after a while, they become a nuisance, but they would show up. They would send an inspector. The inspector would look at the problem, and then they would rectify that.
Okay, I just need to add extra information. If you're having problems connecting with the agency or you're not getting a response, you need to call our office. You can also call your other elected officials, but I'm going to say call our office. That's what the Constituent Assistance Center is for. We are here to advocate for you with the other agencies and other entities to try to fix or troubleshoot your issue. So there is a pamphlet that was given to you with the program with contact information. Please feel free to use that. Either myself or my Deputy Director, Tanya Hill, who's at the back of the room, will be there to try to assist you along with the community specialists in that unit. Okay, I'm going to take only one more question. Any questions from this side of the room? Okay, yes.
She had the mic all the time.
Yes. Did she ask already?
This lady here.
Thank
This
you.
one right here, she had the mic all the time.
I would like to know, what's qualification, can you hear me? For getting a bump on your block?
For getting a what? Oh, the bump on the block?
Yes, I need one for my block.
DOT,
Yes.
Department of Transportation. You have to give them a call.
I went to the board, I filled out all the papers, I got everyone to sign, and I've been waiting, I haven't heard from anyone. So can you help me tell me what to do next?
Okay, a follow-up call needs to be done. Also, when you call the office, ask to speak to whoever is the inspector of that area, each individual area in Flatbush, East Flatbush, or wherever in Flatbush you're from. There is someone that's responsible for that area. Also, if you go to the community board meetings, you will meet someone there who you can address about that situation.
I live in the community. I be there all the time, and nobody seems to be able to help me.
Ma'am, as I had said before, if you are having some issues, you feel free to use the pamphlet and you can reach out to us as an entity.
Thank you so
okay?
much.
Yeah.
All right, so I am going to kind of wrap this up. I'm so sorry. Feel free to see me afterwards if you have any other questions. We'd be very happy to answer them. At this point, I'm going to move to the next part of our program, a part that I think you guys are going to find a lot of fun. This is where we do the raffle. And I guess you were wondering, how are we going to do that raffle? Well, if you looked in your folder, stamped on the right-hand side, stapled on the right-hand side, is a little red ticket. Okay? That's your number. And you probably were wondering why we were so stingy about just giving you one bag. Well, that's the reason why. We want to make sure this is fair. And for our panelists,
There's nothing in here.
Mr. Barberi, okay, I'd like you to take that bag. And Caroline, there's another bag in that corner. That's for you.
Thank you.
And you don't have
There's nothing in here. No red ticket.
Okay, so as we get another folder for Ms. Gail Dixon, please, we will begin. Okay, we will begin the raffle. I'm sorry? They didn't get a folder? When you got a bag, you got a folder. Okay. It's in there. It's a white folder or a green folder. Okay, it might be at the bottom. Trust me, it's in there. Okay, so as we take a few minutes with that, people in the community room, please be patient. We will have someone there if your number is called. My deputy director is just making sure that we have a bag for one of our panelists, and then we will proceed with the program. Let me just say that the items that are being that were donated for this event came from New York City Office of Emergency Management, also came from Ameriplan Health Benefits, and also from NextDoor LLC Computer Support. We want to thank those organizations for providing these wonderful donations for your pleasure and for your practical use. Okay, but in the meantime, while we're waiting for that, that folder, I just want to let you know what's in your folders that you should have in each one of your bags. I've mentioned the volunteer information. There is also a community board application. There's also a listing with pictures for every city council elected official for the 5 boroughs. You will now know their faces, folks. So please feel to use that. We also have a listing of all the elected officials in Brooklyn. That's also in there with their contact information. I've got stuff, we've got coupons in there for you to use for your various organizations. And now I see my director is back. Yes, I have stalled long enough. We're going to get started. Okay. Thank you. Right now, let's go for 4. We might have more, but I got to take a look.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon, almost good evening. And now we're at the best part, one of the best parts of the raffle. So we have lovely prizes for you. So I have Florence, she's one of our volunteers, very great. So she's going to assist me with the raffle prize. So we're going to start with the first raffle. Shake it up good, Florence. Okay, the first winning prize ticket number is 772027. So give us a few minutes because I know downstairs they're also running around to see if someone has that. Again, the number is 772027. I'm trying to get them downstairs. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, they see it downstairs. All right, we're gonna move on. Florence.
Maybe it's my ticket. I don't even have my ticket. All right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Check it.
She said save it.
All right, yeah, we're winner this time. Okay.
Which one?
Wow.
Okay, the next ticket, 771842.
And the winner is? Nobody. Maybe that's my ticket too.
All right, we're going to give them a few minutes downstairs. Again, the ticket number is 771842. Oh, wait a minute, that may be a winner. Hello? Which ticket? Okay, send that person upstairs. So we have a winner for 772027. Oh, the second one was 771842. You got a winner or no? That's okay. You want a few minutes? We have a winner with this ticket. They're coming up. They're making their way upstairs. So we're going to move on. Oh, let me pick it. Just need a bigger one. Nice. The winning number is 771835. Okay, I'm going to wait a few minutes to repeat that again for those on the downstairs. The number is 771835. Okay, let's move on. Okay, ticket number 771853. Yeah. That's the winning ticket. So put that aside. We have two more. Yeah. Okay. Okay. How many? Man, we have two more prizes.
Broken up the gold bags between 4, 3, and 3.
Okay, so two more. Okay, the next number, we have 772018. Again, that number is 772018. Okay, moving on. This is it.
Okay, we found out that the winner earlier from downstairs is actually in a wheelchair, and he's trying to make his way upstairs. But we can actually take it down to him if that, let's hope, is he hopefully still downstairs? We'll take it down to him.
And the winner is next. That number is 772003. Again, that number is 772003. You want? No. Oh, she want to pick. Okay, moving on.
Okay, Miss Velvet, pick a winning ticket now. Yeah, because
Honorable Eric Snyderman is here, and he's on his way up. The format we'll use is the Attorney General would be the keynote speaker. He's going to make a presentation. We'll ask him to take a few questions, but he has to leave because of religious observances. And then we have a panel of experts that will discuss the criminal justice system We'll have that discussion, and then immediately after that, we'll have a second panel that will deal with how do we mobilize to affect change. All right, thank you very much for coming, and we'll begin momentarily. Thanks.
Good afternoon. How's everyone doing? Good, good. We are fortunate. This is a beautiful event that's an additive to Caribbean Heritage Month, and I want to thank the team and the committee that has continued to put together some great events over the last few days. Today, we are fortunate to have with us our Attorney General for the state of New York, Eric Snyderman. Eric and I served together in the state Senate, and he was the architect around many pieces of legislation, such as the Rockefeller drug law, which he fought on for years. And just recently, any one of you who have or possess, any one of you who possess a smartphone, Eric was successful in compelling the smartphone or the telephone companies to put kill switches on the phone, and it has shown a substantial decrease in the amount of thefts when the fences realize people are bringing in phones with kill switches. Now folks have stopped snatching iPhones, so I'm an iPhone user, so I got to thank you for that. In addition, I think one of the most important initiatives that the AG participated in is what happened last year around the foreclosures in the banks. I recall sitting down with him several years when he was first elected, and a decision was made to basically cut a deal with the banks across the country, dealing with people who lost their homes based on banking irregularities. And Eric refused to give in. They needed all of the attorney generals across the country, to sign off on the agreement. And Eric stood fast and prevented the sign-off until there was some real givebacks by the banks, and we were able to receive hundreds of millions of dollars because of that. And much of that money is now in a place where we can use it to do things like tenant protection, do things about housing battles that we're having. So it was because of his initiatives and his steadfastness that we were able to see that money come not only to New York State, but across the country. So he has a long list of successes on legislation in the state Senate and some of the great things he's doing in the Attorney General's office. And he wants to just share a few moments on how we mobilize youth towards justice. And so without further ado, our Attorney General of the state of New York, Eric Snyderman.
Thank you. You know, your borough president was, I have to say, was one of my strongest allies and one of the most steadfast people who I worked with in the state Senate. And I felt pretty good because, you know, he was a captain in the police department, and I became Attorney General, and so you get called General, and then he goes and trumps me and becomes a president. So he's one up on me in that competition, but thank you for having me here. It's always great to be here in the County of Kings. My family comes from here. My father grew up a Park Place in Utica, believe it or not, went to then Boys High, went to Brooklyn College for free, and got a good education. And I will tell you, as we're talking about mobilizing youth for justice, one of the things that you come to understand in public life is no one gets there on their own. And that's something that in my family we never take for granted, right? Think of that, and think of how much we have to mobilize to reconquer in our society that every child can get a good education in a public school, even in a poor community. And every child can afford to have a good college education without graduating with all this debt. He went to Brooklyn College for free, and he got a good education. So let's talk a little bit about mobilizing youth to realize a fair justice system. This is a topic near and dear to my heart because I work for justice. I'm your Attorney General. The building that my lawyers work in Albany is called the Justice Building. And as I just said, I'm very much a believer in mobilizing. Because there are a lot of politicians that like to pretend they get things done on their own. But we know that's not true. The effective political leaders are people who know how to organize and mobilize. And the most important thing in America today is mobilizing youth. Because if this generation, they call the millennials, is the largest generation in history, right? And they have the power, if they get mobilized, to right a lot of the wrongs in the society and bring justice. But it's up to us to work on it, and I commend your borough president and all of the leadership here for having this as a theme of a part of Caribbean Heritage Week and month, and it seems like more than 1 month, actually, because it stretches across the city, and the communities are so rich all across the city, and all across the state, I have to say. As I now travel all around the state, Caribbean communities all around the state of New York bring so much and are so strong and such an important part of the fabric of our society. They've changed fashion, diet, and art habits all over the state of New York. It's not just about Brooklyn. But let me say about mobilization the following. There are two kinds of work we do in public life, and I divide them up this way. There's what I call transactional work, and there's what I call transformational work. Now, transactional work is, how do I pass this bill today? It's the last day of session. How many votes can I get? I don't have time to really reframe the issue or do a lot of organizing. I have to just do the transaction. How do I get myself or someone else elected this November? Not a lot of time to change people's minds about big issues. But doing the transactional work is you only move forward towards justice if you also do the transformational work. And let me give you an example of that Borough President Adams and I worked on together. As he mentioned, after the Rockefeller drug laws were passed in 1974, they were the worst drug laws in the country. The highest minimum sentences for people with simple possession of small amounts of drugs. They set an example for bad laws that passed all over America. But it took until 2009, when we were on the floor of the Senate together, to repeal the Rockefeller drug laws, because the Assembly would do it, but the Senate would not. And we were able to bring it to the floor and win. We won by 1 vote. We only had no votes to spare in 2009. And I was on the floor of the Senate debating for more than 5 hours against really the whole other side of the aisle. That transactional work, that day we got the votes together and we passed that bill, was only possible because hundreds of people, thousands of people probably, had been organizing for years and years and years to call public attention to the injustice of those drug laws, to change people's minds about whether people should go to prison for longer for a drug possession than for attempted murder, which was the law in the state of New York. And those activists And there were people who were mothers who were courageous, called the mothers of the disappeared, because their children had been gone to prison so long they had lost touch with them, who organized and appeared and spoke in meetings all around the state. We had, and you may remember this, some of you did not see Rockefeller drug laws in the press by the end without the word draconian being in front of it, right? It's like we through our organizing, they were called the draconian Rockefeller drug laws, bad, tough. So if you want to change the law, if you want to work for justice, if you want to ensure the American promise that every child has the right to safety in their home and on their streets, no matter how poor a community you live in. Every child has the right to a good school, an affordable higher education, and humane, affordable health care. If you want to restore justice, if you want to bring about justice, mobilizing to do the changing of minds, to do the changing of the dialogue, and mobilizing the youth of today is the most important thing you could do. So the theme for today is the theme for my office's work, but the more people get involved, the more people realize none of us does it alone. We have to do it in coalition. We have to do it by movement building. There's nothing we can't accomplish. You look at what was accomplished by the generations before us. It's an American tradition to try and leave this country a little more just and a little more equitable than it was when we got here, a little fairer, a little more just. That's our challenge too. And we got great leadership here in the city and the state. You can feel changes in the atmosphere right now. Now's the time to mobilize people so we can realize that great vision of a nation of laws, not men and women, of a nation in which equal justice under law is not just a phrase carved over our courthouse, but it is the way we live our lives. So thank you for being here on the most important subject, in my view, on the table today. Mobilize youth for justice, and justice can be achieved. Thank you very much.
So we want to thank again the Attorney General. Let's give him another round of applause. And also thank you to our Borough President for hosting him today at Borough Hall. So we're going to move right into our first session of our panel. The facilitator for this panel will be Whitford Burke, and you can take your places. He will be joined by the first group by Professor Mark Pollard, who is here as well, and also Professor Dr. Trevor Milton, who is here from Queens College. So again, today we're going to first have the expert talks about the law pieces. You can go up there as well. And then the second panel is going to talk about how the community organization mobilize young people and youth to recognize a fair justice system. Thank you so much. And now I'll give you Whitford Burke.
Good afternoon again, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. Just before we get into the meat of the discussion, I just want to give you a brief idea of the concept that drove this forum. Now, as you know, excuse me, in the criminal justice system in America, we've always talked about the inequities, the disparities, and the Attorney General referred to the Rockefeller drug laws. What a perfect example, Borough President. So recently, a few months ago, the Attorney General had the Justice Department conduct a study of the sentences that were imposed by the federal courts over the last 20 years. And the disparities in sentencing, meaning minorities were sentenced to such longer terms of imprisonment than their white counterparts who committed the exact same crimes, that the Attorney General had to petition the court to release thousands of people across the country because they were still serving long sentences, minorities, while the white counterparts who committed the same crimes had already served, some of them had already served their sentences and were released and returned to normal life. So it's this kind of inequity within the justice system, and we know that minorities make up probably about 60 to 65% of persons that pass through the criminal justice system, even though minorities make up about 30 to 35% of the US population. So it's with this in mind that we decided that we needed to have this forum to talk about how do we achieve the next step of the reformation in the Rockefeller drug laws. And I'm so glad that the Attorney General mentioned that. And I'm pretty sure that our panelists here are pretty equipped to deal with this. So let's get straight to it. On my immediate right is Dr. Trevor Milton. He is a professor and a criminologist, but he teaches criminology at Queensborough Community College, and he's actually researched this topic and published on it. So he is an expert in this area. And then to my left is Mark Pollard, who's a CUNY professor as well, but he's an attorney at law, and he's a criminal defense attorney. So first, let me introduce to you Dr. Trevor Milton. Dr. Milton?
Hi. How are you? I think, I'm actually not sure which direction you want me to go in first, but just from hearing the Attorney General and President Adams speak, it's in particular the Rockefeller drug laws, which Mr. Burke had mentioned, you know, like, for example, for powdered cocaine, the original Rockefeller drug laws would give you about 5 years for the exact same amount that a person who was carrying crack cocaine would get 15 years for that exact same amount. And so they were deemed to be very racist drug laws. And then, of course, also mentioned during Attorney General Snyderman's talk is the idea of mobilizing millennials. You know, this is a new concept, but this is something that probably most people are very familiar with now. But mobilizing millennials is something that is, it's going to be interesting to watch, because millennials have so much more knowledge in terms of social media, media generally speaking, and just have an energy that maybe hasn't been around for a couple generations. So I'm very interested to see the end results of this panel. Regarding, and I don't know how much further you want me to go, but regarding teenagers in New York City, New York City makes for a very interesting place to talk about this, because New York City is the first in so many things. Very first juvenile detention facility. Some of the first places to develop hospitals. Some of the very first innovations in social work. But yet, New York City's lagging behind in terms of undoing some of these injustices. Young persons of color, African Americans, or blacks and Latinos make up about 30% and 25% of the New York City population, yet they make up 95% of young people who are going into the prison system right now. And so this is clearly, you know, something that is an injustice within the community of New York City. In particular, I mean, the borough of Brooklyn has some of the highest rates of juvenile incarceration, some of the highest arrest rates. And what's interesting even to note is that juvenile crime is down 28% since the mid-1990s, but juvenile arrests are up somewhere around 17 to 18%. Crime has gone down, but yet more young people are getting arrested as the days move forward. What's happening? You know, why is this happening? You know, a lot of this has to do with the fact that we're criminalizing more misdemeanor offenses, but we're also beginning to criminalize youth and culture. We're also beginning to criminalize young people for being young people. And so this is something that we do have to be concerned about. One thing that I always say, and I wrote in my original book that Mr. Burke had written about, was the idea that, like, juvenile justice is a separate system for a reason. Because young people you know, as older people now, you know, myself, I'm getting older. I'm starting to look at teenagers, and I'm starting to say, like, man, I don't like how they're acting, and you know, I might beef with some of the younger kids in my neighborhood because of what they do in front of my younger kids. I have two very little kids. I got a 5-year-old and an almost 2-year-old. But we have to remember that we were all teenagers at some point. You know, we were all arrogant. You know, we were all thought that we were indestructible. You know, there are even studies that say that by definition, a 16-year-old is somewhat of a sociopath because of how arrogant and how indestructible they feel. But we've all been there, you know. So that justice system is separate for a reason, and young people do need to be treated separately for a reason, cannot be treated as adults. Because they're still growing, they're still developing, they're still finding out who they are, in some good ways and some bad ways. And so generally speaking, this is a problem. Currently we have, for the young people who are going into the criminal justice system, 89% of boys, 81% of girls are recidivating, meaning that they're going back into the criminal justice system after they've exited it. And so it is time for us to focus on ways to mobilize them and ways to make them feel that they can be a part of this criminal justice system that they deeply distrust for reasons, you know, for good reasons for that matter. So we certainly have some work to do.
Thank you very much, Dr. Milton. So just some housekeeping. We'll have about a 7-minute presentation from our panelists. And after the collective presentation, we'll do some Q&A before we move to the second panel. So now, Professor Pollard.
Good evening, brothers and sisters.
Good evening, sir.
All right, come on. You can give it a little bit more life. It's Friday night. Good evening, brothers and sisters.
Good evening.
I hope that you don't mind me standing up. I sit in court all day long, so I need to get some exercise. Before I talk about the subject matter, I want to talk about something very important right now. I cannot believe that we have this panel, this symposium going on here tonight in the office of the Borough President. Do you know why we have this evening? Does anybody know why? Because the leadership of one person, Eric Adams. I've known this man since, I don't want to date you, my brother, but I've known him for about 25 years, and this is a man that didn't start walking the walk when he became a politician. This man stood for justice his entire life. So thank you, President Adams. Thank you so much. So he's bringing justice right here to Brooklyn Borough Hall. Thank you very much, Brother Rickford. Thank you, Brother Professor. Let me just say this today, all right? I have been practicing law in the courts of New York City and New York State in this country for the past 25 years. You're all supposed to say you don't look that old. Y'all insulting me. Supposed to say he only looks about 30, 25, yeah, he's lying. But the bottom line is this, I'm sad. I'm angry about what I see going on with the alarming, the stunning, the incredible rates of incarceration of black and brown people, mostly from poor neighborhoods, in what's commonly called as ghetto neighborhoods. I'm astounded, I'm upset. But on the other hand, I'm happy because y'all may not know this, but we got a president named Barack Obama who has been speaking out. It doesn't get the media attention as some other things, but he's been speaking out about this problem. Did y'all know that? He's been, you know that, bro, President, we know this, Rick. He's been talking about the alarming rates of black male incarceration in particular. And I got something to tell you as a father of a daughter, it ain't just the males getting arrested now, all right? The girls are getting arrested too. So this is the problem. And the only reason why we have this problem is because, see, when I grew up, when Eric grew up, it was almost impossible for a young man doing the right thing in school and trying to do the right thing to get arrested. Am I right, Borough President? Almost impossible. But all of a sudden in the 80s, we had something called the crack epidemic. And then after the crack epidemic, there's something that began called the war on drugs. It ain't working, ladies and gentlemen. The war on drugs is not working. That's why Attorney General Snyderman and Eric Adams have spoke out against the Rockefeller drug laws that had to change. Because what we did is we created a culture of black and brown people who are criminalized for life. Did y'all know a felony record is for life in New York State? Did y'all know that? I mean, there's some changes, but this is a life. And then my problem is I'm in the courts every single day. And know who I see in court every single day? People look like us, black and brown people. You mean to tell me white America, white middle class people, they're not selling drugs? They're not using drugs? Are you kidding me? Does that make any sense? We all know that drugs are being used by white, black, brown, it doesn't matter. But guess who gets arrested? We are. That's because we are targeted as a community. So what we got to do to mobilize our young people is we got to start educating people more on what's going on. I think I read a statistic that 1 in 3 African-American males, I think under the age of 25, have been arrested or in the criminal justice system. Did y'all hear me? 1 in 3, it might even be higher than that. 1 in 3, we got to stop that. I saw a statistic lately, what is it, said that we have more black males incarcerated than in what? Y'all read it? Than what? No. Help me out, give me something more. Then in 1850, there are more black males incarcerated now than there were slaves in 1850. Thank you, sister. Can you imagine that? Wow. More incarcerated now. Did you hear me, Professor? Than slaves. We got to stop this. So I know I'm told that I can only talk for about 5 minutes, but can you give me just 2 more minutes more? You know, it alarms me that I have a 17-year-old daughter, a senior in high school, and instead of talking about the birds and the bees and all that other stuff, I got to talk about, all right, now, this is what you got to do. You don't want to go out and get arrested. It is easier. Can you imagine that? I got to tell my girl how to avoid being arrested. It's crazy. A girl. This is alarming. I'm not supposed to have this conversation, but now people are being arrested in our community, being arrested for riding a bike on the sidewalk. Did y'all know that was going on? Can you imagine that? That's all I did when I was a kid. I didn't ride in the street. I was afraid to ride in the street. Getting arrested for riding a bike on the sidewalk. They get arrested for being in the park too late. They're getting arrested. No. Let me change that. They're not only getting arrested by having little fisticuffs in school. Okay, I fought almost every week in school, and I know you did too, Eric, but I fought almost every day in school, and my mother would come down to the school and speak to the dean, and my mother would say, don't do that anymore, and then the dean said, okay, go back to class. We told your mother. Now, you have a fight in school, our kids are being let off in handcuffs. Can you imagine that? Now, thank goodness for the leadership of people like Eric Adams when he was a captain. I know he was y'all saw him on TV speaking up on this, but we all got to mobilize and solve this myriad of problems. Again, we got big problems, brothers and sisters. I'm going to sit down and let Rickford take over, but I'm upset, I'm angry, but remember, I'm happy because of leadership from Barack Obama, leadership from Eric Adams. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mark. And before we continue, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of the Honorable Omaima David. She's the Consul General of Antigua and the chair of the CARICOM Consular Corps. Thank you very much for coming. Also, the Consul General of Guyana, the Honorable Brentnell Evans. Thank you very much for coming. And of course, we have our own Borough President who is hosting this afternoon, Eric Adams. I'm glad that the BP is here because this is something that I think that as a politician, that I know he's concerned about. And I'll direct this first to Dr. Milton. Of recent, and Mark, you touched on it, of recent, I noticed that incidences in schools, particularly high schools, that you should just be suspended for or sent to detention. You're getting arrested for now. Yeah. And that's because they have criminalized school incidents, and NYPD is responsible for security in the schools. What can we do? Even generally in society, young black men in particular are arrested for the most stupid things. For instance, just yesterday I saw a young man, must have been 16 or 17, arrested on Utica Avenue for riding on the sidewalk. He did actually, I think, run into somebody. But while he was being arrested, a Chinese fellow drove by riding his scooter right on the same sidewalk, delivering Chinese food.
So, if I may, if I could speak to the roots of that first. Here's what I've noticed about New York City. One of the things that the safest big city in the country right now, as Bloomberg said a few years back, one of the things that's always heralded about New York City is that our crime rates have gone down 46% since 1996. And a few years prior to that, I would say that New York City started to get used to something. The beginning of the Giuliani era, and throughout his 2 terms, I think we started to get used to using police officers to fix most of our, I don't even want to say crime problems, but just quality of life problems, some of our social problems. So we're very used to using police, and we're very, and as a result of that, we're very used to arresting young men. I wish I could pinpoint the year that we stopped using security guards and started to use NYPD officers for safety officers in schools. And just like you're mentioning, Mr. Burke, the idea that even a fist fight amongst 2 13-year-olds for that matter, because as it stands right now, I mean, if you were to ask your average public safety officer, if you were to ask your average school safety officer, which is worse right now, is it high schools or middle schools? And they're responding more to the middle schools right now. 7th and 8th graders right now are getting in more trouble. They're the ones being hauled off in handcuffs. So that's, what is that, 12, 13, 14. That used to be a suspendable, detention, suspension. And now this phrase, tough on crime, is so ingrained in us. We want to use it for everything. We want to use it as a catchphrase for everything. Principals of schools I want to be tough on crime. Mediate between the 2 kids that fought with each other. It was probably over a Twinkie or something. Who knows? You don't have to send them away in handcuffs. Yeah, sure.
And if I could piggyback on that, Professor, I think I read, brothers and sisters, that it costs about $9,000 a year to educate a young person in the public school system. But it costs, in the juvenile justice system, it costs, I think, 10 times that, $90,000 a year. So where's the logic in that, Professor?
It's actually $250,000 a year.
How much did you say?
$250,000.
My number's off. That's astounding.
$250,000 a year to incarcerate
Astounding.
a young person in New York City.
Astounding.
Within the 3 facilities that are here in New York City. So and the numbers for education, I mean, we started off pretty low, but every year it drops about $500,000 per student. We're currently, probably around $9,000 per student to educate somebody, and the numbers to incarcerate young people, $250,000 per year. I mean, this is something that, all right, as a researcher, as a social scientist, just looking at the numbers alone, it frustrates me because it seems so illogical to spend money just to incarcerate people, but politics get in the way. I mean, even down to, I'm just going to mention this one time, the Justice Mapping Center did this study back in 2009, where they looked at the amount of expenditures that the state spends to incarcerate residents of particular neighborhoods, and in fact, they got it down to blocks, and they came up with this term called $1 million blocks. And there was this one square block in Brownsville, here in Brooklyn, $3.8 million per year to incarcerate the people who happen to be from that neighborhood. And so it makes you wonder, imagine, for this one small, I'm not even going to say neighborhood. Brownsville is a neighborhood. This is one square block off of, I believe it's Livonia Ave and Mother Gas.
Could you imagine if they put just $1 million into some social transformation?
This one square block, and it probably adds up to probably about $30 million a year for the neighborhood of Brownsville. But for this one square block, you take that $3.8 million and imagine if you use that money to, I don't know, prevent crime. Stop it from ever happening in the first place, and obviously mobilizing youth, allowing, giving the youth some tools to do something with that.
Well, and I think it's what, I'm sorry, Rick. I think it's what they call, that's not being fiscally smart. Is that what they call it? It's not fiscally smart. When I want to consider, what if we took that same monies and we took care of the problems up front? If we put the money in mentoring, imagine that. Put the money in tutoring. If we put the money in, job training. Put it in sports programs, music programs. If we did that, would we have the need to incarcerate so many people? I don't think so. So, Professor, I agree with you. It's just not fiscally smart. And brothers and sisters, this is not what we call it. This is not rocket science. Anybody can figure out that you're helping young people out if you put the money in a sports program. Is that hard? Is that rocket science? Is that rocket science? Is it rocket science to figure out if you put the money in tutoring, in mentoring? I mean, so it's not rocket science. I think the only problem for why we're not getting it done is we got to what? We got to mobilize. Are y'all with me? We got to mobilize. And when politicians like Barack Obama and Eric Adams and Congressman Akeem Jeffries takes a stand, we got to back them up. Or we got to go out and vote, because I've served as counsel to the New York State Senate, attorney for them, attorney for the New York State Assembly, and I got to tell you, brothers and sisters, the politicians that aren't necessarily backing us up, I don't want to say any names, but the ones that don't support our community, a lot of them happen to be Republican Party, they look at our numbers. You know, they'll see, well, let me see how many people voted for this congressman, how many people voted for the borough president. So we got to vote for them in high numbers, because they get this, other people that oppose us get to see the kind of backup our politicians have. Are you with me? So again, we got to mobilize, because this doesn't make any sense. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll ask one more question, and then we'll open it up to questions from the floor. And the way you'll do it, Gil, we'll have someone going around with a microphone, or so you'll come up to the microphone, you state your name, tell us who you are, and you'll state your question briefly, and the panelists will respond. Now, Professor Pollard, if I just want some clarification. Let's suppose someone was incarcerated, and we spoke about the inequities in the sentencing. So let's say somebody in Bronxville was arrested for selling 2 grams of crack cocaine, and somebody in Sheepshead Bay was arrested for selling 2 grams of pure powder cocaine. And the person in Bay Ridge was sentenced to 2 years, and the person in in Bronxville was sentenced to 10 years. That's an equal protection problem. It's a violation, as far as I'm concerned, of the Constitution, because the Constitution says everybody must be treated equally. Now, if you were the person from Bronxville, how do you seek redress?
That's for me, Rickford? Yes. Well, see, brothers and sisters in Rickford, the problem is the way the law is as it stands now. You very often don't see lawsuits addressing that issue, because the United States Supreme Court has held that in order to file a lawsuit for race discrimination in the criminal justice system, you have to show evidence that is conscious. Everybody understand what I'm saying? You've got to show evidence that is consciously done. And that's hard to find. We all know why it's being done, but you're not going to find a memorandum from NYPD saying, okay, I want you to stop this many blacks and Latino people this week. You're not going to find that hardcore evidence, so it's hard to be able to make what we call a prima facie case. And one of the other problems, brother, with the system is, and don't get me wrong, I'm a criminal defense attorney, and I earn my living by that, but what happens is very often people in different neighborhoods like Sheepshead Bay, they can't hire the best representation, all right, to fight for them. So we have inequities in the ability for people to get top-notch legal representation, like myself, but but the bottom line is this. There's a number of reasons for this problem, brothers and sisters in Rickford, and one of it has to do with the laws have to be changed and make it easier to bring lawsuits.
Thank you. Questions?
My name is Ariel. I'm the president and founder of a nonprofit organization that works with youth in Brooklyn. And we have been insisting that in order to fix our criminal justice system, we can not only engage the NYPD and lawyers, but also how we can strategize and work with the Department of Education. This is the elephant in the room, and nobody speaks about it. Because, yeah, we can complain about, the police and the lawyers, but they are part of the enforcement law system. They're not part of the education public system. So in any of the strategy that we are talking here, yeah, we're trying to pass laws, but we are missing the point of getting our communities being educated from within. And our youth spend most of the hours in the school rather than being in the street. When you get a boy or a girl from 8:30 to all the way to 3 p.m., you have something to do with the system that hold them. So I wonder if there is a strategy here to really engage the Department of Education in how not only to deal with the enforcement law system, but how to create a more civic engagement approach in the way we educate our youth.
If I may, thank you. Give it up. That's a great question from Brother Ariel. Is that right? Ariel. A-R-I-E-L. All right. Thank you, brother. Thank you so much. I'm glad you brought that up because it amazes me at the lack of basic understanding that our young people have about the criminal justice system and little things that I wish that they had known. And the biggest thing I get when young people get arrested and they ask me, well, Mark, how long is a criminal record for? And I tell them, son, that one little mistake you made is going to cost you a criminal record for life. And they're stunned. Almost none of them knew that one little thing, did you know that, Rick? They don't know that one little indiscretion will cost them or can cost them a criminal record for life. So we need to educate them on that. We need to educate them on what it means if you get a criminal record. It's hard enough being a black or brown young man or a woman today to get a job, but it means that you're probably not going to get a job. It means that you may not get loans for college, personal loans. It means that you may not get housing. It means that you can be stigmatized for the rest of your life. So I agree with you, Brother Ariel. We got to bring the education into the schools because they're there every day, at least from the first part of their life. They're in school every day. So I think we got to do that. Thank you.
Dr. Milton?
I would actually say that there is a direct correlation between our education system and those that and the youth that end up in the criminal justice system. Don't quote me on this number because I'm not sure how old this number is. It might be a few years old at this point, but I believe that New York City only graduates about 30% of its students. That's about 70% of its students don't get the diploma. To me, that would be a direct correlation between, lacking that education, lacking the diploma, and possibly turning to a life of crime. There's obviously a bunch of other components going along with that. For a young person who could make, this number throws people off. They say the average drug dealer in New York makes about $5,000 a week. Unfortunately, that number includes the bosses. Actually, your average street dealer only gets paid about $3 an hour. It's actually very little money. But they hear that 5,000, they hear that 10,000, they're like, I'm going to get rich off this, screw this school, and they want to go in that direction. So I think there does need to be, it's not just about telling young people, get to where you're supposed to go, but give them a reason to go there. It really is about, motivating the educators here, and I'm probably supposed to say that we should give this new commissioner of education a chance. She's new, so we'll see where our education system goes. But I certainly, would implore the city to make more effort to make it less about policing young people and more about teaching them. certainly.
And again, one of the problems is, for whatever reason, since at least the 1980s, since I was a young man, our country has been committed to the concept of punishment. Would you say that, Professor? The concept
Absolutely.
of punishment, as opposed to before the 1980s and the so-called war on drugs, it was more of a thought process of helping people, giving them the support that they need. For those who get in trouble, rehabilitation. And all of a sudden, the focus became punishment. I think when I was growing up, I think I read that it was like about 200,000 black males incarcerated in this country, and of late it's been something staggering, like 2 million or something like that. It's that the numbers have changed, and all of that is because of a shift in policy in our country, where we're focusing on punishment instead of prevention or rehabilitation. Would you say that, Professor?
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I mean, it's even taken another step past punishment to warehousing. Because we do have high unemployment rates. We do have a lot of young people who are drifting and who are unemployed, who don't necessarily have a solid place in the society. And where are we supposed to put them? And so I think a big chunk of our criminal justice system does look at it as, well, we have a place for young people who have no actual function in our society. We can warehouse them. You know, we can put them in prisons. We can put them in jails.
And on that note, I see you got a book there, brother Professor. Would you want to tell us about your book?
I'm not one to shamelessly plug.
Well, I'm going to plug for you, brother.
I did bring a copy of my book there. I was actually going to give it to Mr.
What's
Burke.
the name of it?
This is called Overcoming the Magnetism of Street Life. So, actually, you know what? I can answer the question and plug the book simultaneously. How about that? So, in my book, I published this book 2 years ago, and one of the things that I researched was really getting into why would a younger person be involved in the criminal justice system? Is it truly pure victimization? Is it truly purely they just trip and fall into the criminal justice system? Or is there an added cultural element that we don't pay attention to that much? And so I mentioned this again within the title, The Magnetism of Street Life, is the idea that we live in a culture today where going to prison is not a shameful thing anymore. I did a study in 2003 at Columbia, and I interviewed young people, one of them who were just coming back from long stints, 5 years, 6 years, 10 years in prison. One of the questions I asked them was, how does your community see you when you come back? How do young people look at you? And all of them across the board, you know, I interviewed 200 plus people, and they all said the exact same thing. Young people look up to me like I'm a war hero, like I've just been in battle, and they want to hear my stories now. And they can't wait to be in the exact same situation that I was in. You know, and of course, all of them are like, young man, you know, like, prison's not for you. It's really not as glamorous as it appears. But we're in a culture now that makes it look glamorous, that makes street crime look glamorous.
And if I can, is it that, and I want to transition into the legislative aspects of it, is it that it's glamorous to them, or is it the belief that the whole system is so unjust that inevitably you fall victim to the system regardless?
I'd say both, you know, D, all the above, you know, there's C, all the above. I mean, certainly, I mean, you have a lot of young people who do feel hopeless. They feel like it's only a matter of time before I have police contact. It's only a matter of time before I get, it's funny that we haven't mentioned stop and frisk yet. This is funny. It's only a matter of time that I'm going to get pulled over. I've met so many young people that they'll carry around a wallet, but they'll keep their ID separate because they know that on their way to work, on their way to school, on their way to church, some officer is going to stop them and put them against the wall, and they just want to have their ID ready and just, you know, here. Because they want to get the stop and frisk over and done with as quickly as possible, but it's a fact of life for them.
Okay, we have a question.
Yep.
Okay.
What about taking the kids that have been incarcerated and bringing them into the school, explaining what they've been through to scare these kids from not doing what they do?
How about bringing?
Did they have a program once?
That is a great point. I remember years ago, I think they might have started bringing back, they had a show called, what was that show? Scared Straight.
Scared Straight.
Man, that show scared the heck out of me when I was a kid. Anybody saw that when they were a kid? I saw Scared Straight. I was so afraid. So that's a great point. We got to bring that into the schools because it petrified me. I wasn't going to jail.
I think there are organizations that do that. I actually take my students to Sing Sing Correctional Facility sometimes. It's the closest max security facility to New York City. It's about an hour's drive from here. They have a Scared Straight program where they bring students to the prison. But just generally speaking, I think that high school students need to hear about those that have been incarcerated. I mean, because there's the TV version of incarceration where, you know, like, I'm just going to be a boss in here, and then they're going to feed me lobster and caviar, and I'm just going to run things up.
No, come right up.
There's that. But they need to hear the real, it's true. Every high school student does, and at this point, every middle school student needs to hear the stories of what it's actually like to be incarcerated. So, I mean, I definitely say your idea, it's being done on a small scale, but it should be done on a much larger scale, definitely.
Yeah,
certainly.
And a great point. And one problem that we have, and I hope nobody here minds me saying this. One problem that we have is I hate to say it, the rap culture to some extent. See, our kids see Lil Wayne and a few other rappers, and they think this is reality. Guess what? It's the business of show. It's not reality. I've represented, I can't say any names, but I've represented a few rappers over the course of my career. These guys are bookworms. They are really smart, but in order to sell records and get record contracts, they've got to act a fool. So when young people see this, they think, oh, this is what I've got to do to be successful. No, you do that, you get arrested. Yeah. Don't be fooled. Lil Wayne isn't the same guy that he wants you to think he is to sell records. Does that make any sense? Okay, I remember growing up listening to Jay-Z, right? Now, do y'all really think that if Jay-Z was the thug that his image used to project, that Beyonce would marry him? Do y'all really think so? No, of course not. She's not going to marry a thug. It's an image, and it's an image that has done well for him. So we have to let our kids know that what you see on these rap videos, that's just an image. It's the business of show. That's why they call it show business. It ain't the reality business. As a matter of fact, even reality shows aren't reality. All right? So we got to educate young people, and by getting people who are real into the schools and tell them what's really going on, and jail is not something to be proud of, and good things don't happen in jail, that's a good start.
Question.
Good evening. I'm Pastor Jenny Small. I'm the Executive Director of He Restores My Soul Outreach Ministries. And I actually think we are putting the cart before the horse, because one of the things we should focus on in our community for the youth, because I'm very passionate about the youth, what's the source of their pain? And what Dr. Trevor Milton mentioned earlier, that we were youth also. And I recall in Barbados growing up, I was a very rebellious youth. I would never think that God would even want to use me. But the thing is, in our home, we were a product of single parenting because our dad walked out on us. So a lot of situations that are being dealt with incorrectly, because kids are being raised in broken homes. When the children are arrested and they're released, they're going back into those broken homes. The situation still exists, their demotivation still exists, their low self-esteem still exists. So it's what are we going to do? Because we are putting the cart before the horse, and we need to understand that the situation lies from within, in the home. There are many broken kids on the street. What are we going to do to address the situation in the home?
Okay, thank you. The panelists will address that question, but we have about 5 minutes to wrap up. I want to throw in the whole issue of legislation and our community's involvement in that process. Now, a few years ago, I worked right in this area. I worked as the counsel to the city council member, David Yaski. Our office was right on Court Street, and every single day, you would find people from this neighborhood coming into the office to discuss some type of legislation. Some of them even drafted different aspects of laws and brought it for the council member to examine and for him to introduce it in the city council. Now, are we in the Caribbean community active in our neighborhoods, active with our elected officials, active at our community boards? Do we talk to our senators about legislation or these laws? Do we talk to the assembly person about these laws? Do we talk to our Congress people about these laws? So that's something to think about as we transition to the next panel. But I just want to give 1 minute each for panelists to conclude and to in any way address the issue by Ms. Small, Pastor Small. Thank you. Mark? Oh, Dr. Milton?
All right, I think as simple as this word is, one of the most important words he said was we. And what do we do? And similar to what I was saying earlier, is that, you know, we've become, as New Yorkers, we've become very used to officials, police, and other types of officials doing things for us. We advocate for them to do work. But the tough answer for this entire topic, Harvard University professor Robert Sampson came up with the term collective efficacy. I mean, it's how effective a community can be collectively. So rather than say, and this is tough, this is a tough thing to do, you see a kid on the corner selling drugs, it's much easier just to pick up the phone and call the police. It's way more difficult, you know, to gather a couple neighbors, walk over to that young person and say, like, you can't do that here. That's the hard part, but that's definitely the most effective part. So, like, if you want to, you know, like, you have to get together with your neighbors. You don't have to be part of an organization. You don't have to, like, you know, build a coalition or anything like that, but just, you know, work with your neighbors to work together collectively. And I feel like that's how you deal with some of those self-esteem issues, is when young people know that their neighbors are looking out for them and not just calling the police on them all the time. They might respond better.
And Pastor Small, thank you very much. I just want to share something with you. As a criminal defense attorney, I have represented and I come in contact with a number of members of the Bloods and the Crips gang. And my gut reaction is always to sometimes be the disciplinarian and say, listen, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that, you shouldn't be doing this, and they shouldn't. But when I hear their stories about how they grew up and not having a father and their mother on drugs, just, I mean, it almost brings me to tears hearing about their background. So I'm with you. We got to look at them as people. And the bottom line is, young people today, they have it a whole lot harder than in our generation. Does anybody believe that? I mean, I remember when I was young, it was impossible to graduate from high school and not get a job. It was impossible to graduate from college and not get a job. I mean, we got to bring hope back. We got to start caring about people, putting money and time and giving our young people the support that they need, because it's hard today for young people. It really is. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mark Pollard, attorney at law, and Dr. Trevor Milton, criminologist and professor in criminal justice at Queens Borough Community College. Thank you very much.
Can I just, I don't want to shamelessly self-promote, but my name is Mark Pollard, Pollard, and if you forget my name, I know this is Caribbean Heritage Month, but I'm a Southern boy, so just think collard greens. Collard greens, Mark Pollard. I'm online, you can look me up. I have a book also, Amazon.com, No Knowledge, No Justice by attorney Mark Pollard. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
for having us.
Thank you. And now we're going to transition into the community activist portion of the session today. Dr. Gore, who is also a physician at Kings County Hospital and also the director of CAVI, Kings Against Violence Initiative. We have James St. Germain, who is here with us. We have Jeremiah Hyacinth, and Shanduk Mafada, and Janelle Hazelwood. Dr. Gore is going to lead out this panel discussion. Let's give Dr. Gore and his panel a round of applause. Let's welcome them.
So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm very pleased to be a part of this event, especially as being not necessarily being from the Caribbean community, but my mother can make sorrow, and I grew up in Flatbush, and I work at Kings County Hospital, so I guess that makes me honorary Caribbean. Now, I'm an emergency physician at Kings County Hospital in the Department of Emergency Medicine, and we see a lot of trauma, especially trauma amongst young people, in particular trauma that can be avoided. And one of the things that often comes up is we hear about the problems, and our previous panelists talked about statistics and talked a bit about mobilization, and now we want to take the next step and start to discuss actual solutions. You know, how do we mobilize each other? How do we mobilize our young people? But most importantly, how do we share resources that we have in particular? So we have a very important panel up here. And some people I know, because we've spoken on some panels together in the past and been on some TV programming. Some folks I've had the pleasure to work with personally. But most importantly, we have a dynamic group of people up here who are about change and transformation within our communities. I'd like to mention some of our panelists. We can actually go down, but we have Brother Jim St. Germain, who's with the PLOT program. Brother Marlon Peterson is in transit. He should be here any minute now. He had to come from Yonkers. He was working up there. We also have Brother Jeremiah Hyacinth with Project Education. We have brother to my left, Shanduk Mafada, who's the founder of an organization called Gangsters, making astronomical community changes. And to the far left, we have Miss Janelle Hazelwood, who's with the associate producer of blackenterprise.com. So let's give our panelists a round of applause. So, a couple of things. It all starts with the story. Now, Dr. Trevor Milton spoke about telling his story and talked about his book. Professor Mark Pollard almost like Collard, but Pollard spoke about telling stories as well. And, especially with hearing what young people had to say to get their perspectives. Now, I'd like our panelists to just one by one just go down the line. We'll start to my far right. But I want to hear who you are and what are the organizations that you represent. And please tell us a little bit about something about your respective organizations. We can start with Brother Jim St. Germain.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Thank you to Pastor Monroe for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to actually speak to you guys in terms of the work that I'm doing currently to help young people. I myself was a young man who was in the juvenile justice system for about 4 years. So from the age of 14 until approximately 18, I was incarcerated. I've had a chance to almost live in almost every New York City juvenile justice facility throughout my early years. I've been to Bridges when it was open. I've been to Horizon. I've been to Crossroads. And finally, I spent approximately 2 years at a residential facility in Park Slope, Brooklyn. Growing up as a young man, I'm from Crown Heights, Brooklyn, right there on Nostrand Avenue. My friends and I made some poor decisions. We were out there running the streets wild and doing some things that we weren't supposed to do. But as you guys heard earlier, when you grow up in that type of environment, sometimes it's almost impossible to escape certain things that's taking place around you. So I got caught up in that life, but thankfully for me, it happened to me at a very early age. So I was able to going through the juvenile justice system, and I got some help, and I met some mentors, and I met some people who took interest in me and who really fought for me and give me an opportunity to be where I am today. I'm currently a graduate of John Jay College, and thank you. Where I majored in political science, and I am also at NYU right now. I'm getting my master's in public administration and nonprofit management, and after that, I'll be going to get my PhD. And I think I like Dr. St. Germain. It sounds really good. So I'm also the founder of a non-for-profit organization that provide very intense mentoring, college and job preparation to at-risk youth. So we focus a lot, and particularly in Brooklyn. So we work with young people who are like myself, the way I used to be, who are coming from dysfunctional households. Young people, their fathers are in the criminal justice system. Their mothers probably struggling, and they're actually coming in and out of our facilities. In addition to that, the same facility that I was in as a young person, I'm currently supervising 35 of them. And in New York City right now, we have the Close to Home initiative. So when a young person gets arrested and they get sentenced, they no longer go upstate New York. They stay in the city and do their time in the Close to Home facilities. And my job right now with New York City is that I go to those facilities and I overlook and talk to the young people and advocate for them and make sure that they're getting the treatments that they're supposed to get in order for them to succeed and have a fair shot at making it in life. And my organization, Plot, we provide these young people with a very intense mentoring, and we provide them with college and job preparation so we can try to help keep them out of the juvenile justice system. We keep them from coming back, or we also keep those who are struggling in school from entering the juvenile justice system. So, I'm very thankful to be here, and I'm looking forward to engaging with you guys. Thank you.
My name is Jeremiah Hyacinth. Aside from being the founder of Project Education, I was told to be very brief, so I will comply. I must say that secondly, I'm also the Vice Consul at the St. Lucia Consulate here in New York. One of my responsibilities is to deal with nationals who are scheduled to be deported. It's heartbreaking when on a regular basis you get a call from somebody who's detained for some minor offense and he or she is scheduled to be deported. So this is what I deal with, one of my responsibilities, and so I will speak a bit more about it later. I was told to be just very, very brief. And with Project Education, it's a nonprofit I started 4 years ago, and it's a very simple project. We collect school supplies on behalf of needy children in St. Lucia, and at the start of the school year, every child, close to sometimes 300 kids, are given school bags or backpacks filled with school supplies. It's a very simple project. We're into our 4th year, as I said. I'll continue.
Good evening. My name is Sean Duke McFadder, and I'm the executive director of a nonprofit organization called Gangsters Making Astronomical Community Changes. And Pastor Monroe's, we spoke about this name already, let's fix that. Yes, it's a difference. My history is at the age of 16, while incarcerated on Rikers Island back in 1994, I became one of the first handful of young Black and Hispanic men to join the New York City Bloods. That was my lifestyle for the next 15 plus years. I rose in the ranks of one of the most notorious sets, Gangsta Killer Blood, and became a double and a triple OG. And eventually, while doing the prison stint upstate in the box, I decided that it was time for something different in my life. So I made my change. And I listen to a lot, and I hear so many different perspectives. And people are reaching out for the answers, and there's some of us who are out there who actually have the answers. I have heard the lady ask earlier about coming into schools. This is something that we do as an organization. There are many different ways to work with these youth. And there are people who know what it's like without research, no disrespect to anyone's perspective, but by living that life to fully understand how it feels to be that child. I came from a foster home, and I had no father, and I was raised in the streets. So I know what it's like to be that person, but my mission now is to take those people who don't believe that change is possible and to show them that it is in fact possible, because I'm a living testimony of that change. And there are others out there just like me. And the thing that we need more so now is to find those people and give the resources that's needed to get those people jobs that have the ability to talk down the shooters in our community. These are some of the things that we do. It's a wild organization of work, and you just can't pinpoint one area when you're talking about what's causing gun violence in our communities. So we work in conjunction with many different brothers and sisters and organizations, such as the Good Pastor, the brother here, the brothers James Maine, Marlon. We know each other prior to coming here because we are actually out in the community doing the same work. So just to wrap it up, that's pretty much who I am, and the work that I do in the community is to bring down the level of gun violence in our streets. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I am Janelle Hazelwood from blackenterprise.com, which is the digital entity of Black Enterprise Magazine. First, I want to say thank you so much for having me tonight, and also for spending your time capital here, which is what I'm very big on and what we are big on at Black Enterprise. Black Enterprise Magazine is the preeminent resource for wealth building for people of color and entrepreneurship. I currently helm the career and global aspects of digital and magazine coverage. So we are all about empowering yourself through monetizing your purpose, as well as your finances and your family wealth. So that's what basically I'll be focusing on today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Marlon Peterson. First, let me apologize for being late. I was at a conference dealing with college and prisons upstate New York, so I kind of just drove in just now and got here. So a little bit about me. So yes, I wear the hat right now of the Director of Community Relations at the Fortune Society organization that does a lot of work around reentry and preparing, creating transitions for folks who are leaving the jail and prison systems throughout. Anyone can walk in, get services, housing, et cetera, et cetera. But besides that, as Shandu mentioned, I think I like to say I do people work. So the work that I've been doing, whether it been here in Crown Heights with SOS Save Our Streets, intervening in gun violence conflicts in the community, whether it be with the organization that we started, myself and a couple other brothers called HALA, which stands for How Our Lives Link All Together. It's a program that several guys, including myself, who spent a significant amount of time in prison started, and it was a youth empowerment program that has been implemented in public schools in Brownsville. And also I'd like to say that's important that I'm on the board of an organization called Families for Freedom that does a lot of work around folks who are caught up in the immigration deportation system, as the brother was earlier mentioned. And particularly, I think it's important, particularly as folks who have Caribbean, West Indian descent, that we sort of understand these systems that are in our neighborhoods and know how to navigate them. So I mean, I'm involved with a lot of work, just like Shandu, spent a lot of time, a third of my life inside of penitentiaries upstate New York. But I'm here to give a sort of like a multiplicity of perspectives, and I'm just thankful to be in your presence.
Thank you. So the purpose of our panel and the symposium itself is figuring out how to mobilize youth. And earlier, the Attorney General, Eric Schneiderman, mentioned, he talked about the millennials. He talked about the millennials being the largest group of young people ever. This is a huge resource. And so specifically, how can we mobilize young people to get them involved in social justice and within the whole arena of social change?
Well, I actually would like to piggyback off of what this young man said, which is actually having people who are really involved and who are really experiencing these things. Being in media, I've been at panel events where we'll talk about youth, but there are no youth on the panel, or there are no youth being mobilized in the way or reached in the way in which they consume media, or in which what they could be related to. So there's a big gap sometimes between generations, and I think that's a big issue to getting them mobilized. Millennials are the biggest consumers, for instance, of social media. They're the biggest consumers of mobile. They're the biggest consumers of technology in general, but they're not the creators. So for what I feel, in my opinion, educating them part of the solution to me, because it's a holistic problem that has so many different solutions that have to be combined. The way that I feel is you can mobilize youth by coming to them where they are, including them in the conversation, including their insights, and valuing their knowledge in the community.
Anybody else get it?
And I think it also, we have to start thinking that, you know, when we see a young person, and, you know, I'll give you a perfect example. This morning I'm coming out of my house, and there was this young man who was about 6'4", tall young brother, and he's walking down Notion Avenue, and his pants are literally on the ground, and and his shirt was off. And as a young man growing up myself, I used to you know, sag my pants, and so when I saw this young man and I pull him to the side, I said to him, I grab his hands, and I do this on a regular basis. Every time I see a young person in the streets, I approach them with love and respect. I give them a handshake, I tell them my name, and then I talk to them about how they're representing themselves and the way that they're dressing and some of the things that they're doing in the streets. And I think as a community, that's what we need to get down to. That's what we have to start doing. So when we see a young person that's sagging, or that's about to jump the turnstile, or that looks like he's getting ready to get into something that he's not supposed to get into, it's our responsibility to approach that young person and have a conversation with them and tell them, hey, look, young man, you know, you should pull up your pants, and here's the reason why you should pull up your pants. You tell them a little bit about yourself and why you care about them. These young people, I'm telling you, they're out there looking for advice, they're looking for love, and they're looking for someone to talk to them. A lot of us, we walk right by them, we look at them, we twitch our eyes, and then we don't say anything to them. And then we just criticize them as if they know the answer, but they really don't. So I think in order for us to get to them and mobilize them, first we have to connect with them, approach them, and understand them. And then I guarantee you, I have never stopped a young person in the streets that actually went off of me and cursed me out and say, yo, why are you telling me to pull up my pants, or why are you approaching me like that? Because I approach them with love and respect, and I tell them that, look, I myself, a few years ago, I used to do this. I used to run the streets. I used to sag my pants. You know, I lost 15 friends to gun violence. I've been to the juvenile justice system. So I approach them that way, I disarm them, and then they'll allow me in their life to help them. And as Shen Dukes mentioned earlier, this is what we have to do in order to get to these young people.
Okay, I want to jump on in on that too. I think the question dealing with like how we can get them involved more so with social justice issues. I think in my experience, as a person who was in these streets doing those same sort of things, the person who spent time, the person who's on the other end of the platform doing a lot of work, I think it's important that it's kind of difficult, but I think it's important that we move from individualizing the problems of our young folks, right? So we tend to problematize the young folks, saying that you are the problem, your gang is the problem, you are doing this, you are doing this. And yes, without not absolving them of accountability and responsibility for what they do, but I think it's important to sort of connect them to the structures that sort of create these sort of spaces where they act and conduct themselves in a certain way. I kind of like, and this is nothing new. When we look back into our own history within this country right here, when you see the folks like those who were the Panthers on the West Coast and that side, they were those sort of like delinquent sort of youth, but they were one of the ways that sort of radicalized them and sort of give them, got them to a place where they created programs and opportunities for folks in their neighborhoods, was that they connected their problems to larger social problems, larger social and systemic structures and problems. And I think that's not an easy thing to do. I'm not saying it's easy, but I think it's important that we refrain from sort of alienating our young folks and problematizing them as if they are the pathology, like they are sick. And it's not that. They come from something. It's a wealth of trauma that is sort of like reciprocated through generations that I think they are reacting to and responding to and acting out because of. So, I mean, it's not a difficult thing. I mean, it's not an easy thing, but it's important. I think that as that question about social justice and larger structural issues, that they are sort of understood, like they are interacting within a system that is sort of that they have an opportunity to control, but I need them to understand what it is going on around them.
One thing I've been good at is mobilizing, and as a leader, And when I say leader, it comes from me being part of the gang. I was able to pull people together for violent actions. So it changed my perspective on things when I became positive in my ways. And as I go out there and I talk to these youth in the streets, and I look at the type of questions that we're asking ourselves and the questions that we have to give to them about mobilizing and giving them a fair system. And one of the things that I've learned from being on a different perspective is that there is no system to them. The system of the streets is the only system they understand. And when you ask a young person, 18, 15, 22, what is the difference between a mayor, a council member, a public assemblyman? They don't know none of that. Okay, so think about that. If you're talking about a fair system and they can't tell you what the public speaker job is for them, then how are they going to move forward in seeing the fairness of this system? It doesn't work for them because these are people who they feel have no connection with them. For them, they don't care about that position because that position doesn't directly feed their family or meet their needs. So one of the things we have to start with in mobilizing them is getting them to understand how these positions hold a part in their community and how their voice and their pains matter when it comes to voting. These are one of the first steps that we need to focus on.
Thank you. Now our panelists made some very interesting comments, and one thing in particular, and Brother St. Germain kind of mentioned, but we can't be afraid of the people within our communities. And one of the big things right now, we're looking at the audience, and we're very happy you all came out here to bring people together on a nice Friday afternoon, and it's about 80 degrees, not too hot outside, is an important thing. But the very population that we're looking to address and to mobilize aren't a part of this discussion. It could be because of the timing of the year. I mean, June is Gun Violence Awareness Month, so it's important that we do something like discuss the issues of violence within our communities, but part of it is making sure that we take the issues to the young people, making sure that we bring them and have them a part of this very discussion itself. I mean, we look a little bit young up here, but our gray hairs are starting to set in different parts of our heads. And we won't be those young people anymore. So the question is, we need to start making sure that we can bring this discussion to them. It might be at 8 o'clock on a Monday morning or 12 noon at lunchtime at these respective schools. The young lady in the front mentioned that, why don't we bring our programs to the respective schools? And the good thing is people up here have brought their programs to schools, but nobody knows about it. And that's the big thing. So this is a couple of things as far as just nonprofits itself, and I'm going to kind of give a shameless plug, but more so for all the people up here. Those who are involved in social justice do this because they have a love for it, not necessarily for the work itself, but a love for the communities and a love for the people that are involved. We don't like seeing young people that have been hurt, both physically and emotionally, and so to help alleviate those issues, we've started our respective organizations, and we continue to do so with love. But sustainability is a huge thing, in particular financial stability. And I'm very happy that we have Ms. Hazelwood up here from Black Enterprise, and one of the questions that I have is, how do we improve financial stability for organizations that promote social justice? Many nonprofits, same thing with small businesses, tend to stay up and running for about 3 to 5 years, if that long. And if you're around for 5 years, that's a huge thing. But many of them die down because of volunteer fatigue and also inadequate finances. So for the respective people here on the panel, especially Ms. Hazelwood, how can we help improve financial stability within organizations that promote social justice so that this message can be carried out and enhanced?
Well, what I would say for that is partnerships and synergies are very important. Leveraging your communities and your networks are very important. Media is a very powerful and can be a dangerous tool because people are often consumed with it. They take it and run with it, whether it's true or not. I'll give you a perfect example. I could run a story about Nicki Minaj, for instance, and it will go through the roof and go viral. But if I ran a story about 5 ways a nonprofit can raise their capital, that gets maybe 2 page views. So that shows you media is a business at the end of the day. So I would say leveraging capital, getting back to your question, your networks, leverage those networks. Get into those rooms and those meetings where you believe that you don't have a seat at the table, but you actually do. Diversify who you do business with and how you're pitching to get capital. Pitching is a very big deal. The way in which you present your business, your professionalism, the people that you know. Because I see oftentimes, and sadly with some minority businesses, that the packaging is all off. Oftentimes, I have covered from the gamut, investing, social media, small business, millennials, career, global, anything that you could talk about from Black Enterprise Magazine, I've covered. And from what I've seen, I'm being pitched businesses where they don't have a website, they don't have a business plan, they can't talk about their revenue models, they can't speak on their plans for the future, and also they haven't really been in the room with the people at the table who can really facilitate those things. So even from what I do as a budding entrepreneur, from what I saw that was a need, from what I was being pitched as a media professional, I said, let me use my expertise and actually mold these things for small business owners, particularly minority and women-owned, because they are at a disparity anyway. Whether your information is clear or not, you're still competing against white investors and white venture capitalists and white startups, you know. So you're already kind of at a disparity. But at least if you have those key things in order, you can up your gamut. Also, people like me, like I'm in the room now because I want to be. My father's people are from Trinidad, so I do have a big commitment and a little bit of Caribbean in me. My mother, of course, is Southern American, so you probably can hear the Southern twang. So I like to empower millennials and young professionals on how they can boost their profitability or their marketability, whether you do nonprofits or whether you're, you know, a speaker, an artist, a dancer, or what have you. So if anything you can take away, if any of you are tweeting or LinkedIn, or I don't know how many of you have social media accounts and are helping your peers who could not be here be empowered by this, I would say broaden your network, tighten your pitch, and also be in those rooms like this where everybody is not there and you might think, hey, I'm a black guy, I'm a black woman, I don't belong there. Actually, you do. And maybe you will be the only minority there, but get your foot in the door and bring in the rest of your people.
Oh, wow. Well, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be making sure I have this young lady's contact information. You know, because that's a great opportunity. Because I understand what she's saying. When it comes to, the brother earlier spoke about the music, and I've noticed that they're quick to push a certain brand of music because it's what sells. But when you come to an article that speaks about the good work, yeah, you don't get the type of attention that it needs. Yet at the same time, I feel that it's not pushed hard enough because it doesn't get the sales that they're looking for. And this is where we have to come in as a community to say, okay, listen, we need more of this and less of this. And one of the major things that we promote as an organization is our goal to take the popularity out of negativity, right? As long as it's popular to be a shooter, as long as it's popular to be negative, then they're going to continue to win. And the kids are going to continue to gravitate towards that. But if we take advantage of these different avenues and say, okay, well, listen, if you're doing so much of these articles, I'm going to piggyback, Nicki Minaj and Lil Wayne and so forth, you know, every month, let's find every single month at least 2 organizations, churches, whatever it takes to show the positive work that they're doing in the community. And if we hold all these magazines and these radio stations accountable for this work, then we'll be able to get more resources because people will begin to see the attention that it has. For an example, I'm a big part of the reason why we have the Gun Violence Awareness Month in New York City. I sat down with Karim Kamira last year. Me and Jamani Williams had a great talk this year, and we said, we're going to make this initiative extremely important to New York City. We're not going to allow people to take the importance off of the gun violence in our communities. Now, someone said, after this was done, well, that's not going to stop the gun violence. I said, slow down, right? Because first we're starting with the awareness, right? When you look at Breast Cancer Awareness Month, during the month of breast cancer awareness, for an example, you see pink everywhere, and it's supported. And you have your NBA football players. I don't care what you're looking at on TV. You might see a pink Red Bull can that's supporting breast cancer awareness. In our communities, we feel that the gun violence awareness needs that same type of support. So when we put that attention on that gun violence awareness, starting with the month of awareness and all the work that we're doing, the next step is we want to bring the fact that we're dealing with a mental condition. So a mental condition, and we're not saying a mental illness, we're saying a mental condition where once we bring that mental condition aspect into it, what we're saying is now let's get some resources to deal with the mental aspect, okay? You look at the numbers of how many men are in prison, have psychiatric issues, you will be surprised. Especially when you take a man and he's angry and he goes to prison, and there are a lot of men who haven't done the crime that they're accused of who are sitting in 24-hour cells, right? Imagine 24 hours in the cell for 5, 6, 7, 10 years, the psychological effect that has on you. And they're sending these same people back into society without the mental support that they need. So this is one way of looking at it, saying, okay, let's focus on the mental aspect. And if you don't believe it is a mental condition, the kids are following. When you talk about the music, you talk about the movies. If you're a 5-year-old, you're a 3-year-old, you're a 7-year-old, we're talking about our babies. We were all kids, we were sponges. And as a sponge, if I'm growing up in a household and everything I'm seeing in that household replicates the lifestyle of guns, violence, drugs, and then I go out into the community, and I tell my son, that son goes outside, go outside with your peers. And the peers are doing the same thing. But it may be 1 or 2 that's out in the community that has a good home, right? Because this is how it is in our projects. So now what happens is that kid is seeing the same thing in his house and outside of his house. And as he or she gets older and older and older, they're saying, this is what society is doing. So how is this wrong? So mentally, I'm believing that what I'm doing is the correct thing to do. So now we have to look at it for what it is a mental condition that's embedded into our children's minds.
Yeah.
I also think that I'm happy that you're talking about the mental health issues, and I think that we, particularly as advocates, need to, at some point, see that we'll focus on serving as advocates for the mentally challenged. I also think that she spoke about networking. I think I get a sense, particularly when you look at those of us in the non-profit sector, we are sometimes afraid to network and ask the necessary questions, and as a result, it works against us. And so I think that, and also as we continue to look for ways in which we can sustain ourselves as nonprofits, I think that we also have to look to persons who have served and recognize them and use them as role models for our young people. I think if we continue to do that, then we'll be able to continue our work in the direction that we would love for it to take. Go ahead.
Could I also add one short thing? I'm very big on promoting careers and monetizing your purpose. And I was going to say, when I saw the professor and the lawyer up here, it's like when you grow up, you're taught, oh, be a doctor or be what's going to make you the most money. I know if you come from a Caribbean family, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be an engineer, you're going to be this, you're going to be that, which is perfectly fine. But I think people should push careers that are behind those as well. Be the lawyer, be the guy that's the prosecutor or the criminal lawyer, be the judge, be the person behind these careers who is a nonprofit leader. Because some of these students and young people, from what I speak to, from kindergarten to college students, some of them don't even realize the span of career options and just being able to monetize your purpose or monetize your passions and what you are good at. And I think that empowers people whether you've been incarcerated or not. If you start early and say, you know what, you can be whatever you want to be, but here's a game plan. Let's talk about this. Let's map it out. And if we had programs in schools that actually target resume writing and figuring out what you want to be, who are you, what is your purpose, and giving them a structure about wealth building, and having an estate, and that having an estate is not just a white thing. It's not about just being white and having an estate or a will or having something to build up for your family. As African Americans, we do have those legacies, so telling those truths as well is a part of it.
But one of the, I think it was the pastor who alluded to it earlier, where a number of our kids come from broken homes. And so sometimes that in itself is a challenge. I look at today's paper. Who will serve as an advocate on behalf of this young man? He came from a broken home. His mother, he was tormented by the guy who murdered, the guy he murdered. And as a result, a lot can come out of it. But when I looked at it, and I was saying to him earlier, who will serve as an advocate on his behalf? Because his mother was referred to as a crackhead. His father, played very little role in his life. But I think that what has to happen too, when you look at a young man like that, we as young people, particularly as community leaders, need to have his peers serve as advocates on his behalf. And it's very important because at the end of the day, when you look at young persons nowadays who come from broken homes, we are out there should be able to serve as a buffer between them and the institution, which is sometimes the school and churches.
At this point in time, I'd like to invite some of the members of our audience to come up to the mic if they have any specific questions for the panel as a whole, but also to individuals on the panel. By the way, Pastor Monroe, how much time do we have left?
Hi, my name is Joycelyn Valentine. I'm a registered dietitian. I was born in Antigua. I just wanted to say, this is really great. I'm very much aware of Dr. Gore's work. I work with the Department for the Aging as a dietitian. When you are doing all of this, still include nutrition, because a lot of the young people, they are eating so terribly. And Dr. Feingold years ago said that all of the artificial colors, the dyes, were related to attention deficit. A lot of people try to knock it down, but I think he's correct. But I want to also add that years ago, Carol, there was a woman, Carol, going up and down on the trains selling the little black book. And that little black book helped my son. My ex-husband and I gave him that book. It tells them how to respond to the police. And a lot of the young people really need to know when the police stop them, how they should react. Some of them may still be talking. I remember on Gil Noble one time, an ex-detective talked about how Caribbean immigrants talk with their hands, and that could be very, very threatening to police officers. So in your organizations, I hope you can put that out. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I'll take this simply because we had a discussion earlier about stop and frisk. And oftentimes, yes, I think that it's approved by the Supreme Court as a valid police investigatory tool. But what we have to teach our young people is that when you're confronted by a cop, you need to know your rights, you need to assert yourself, and then ask the relevant questions, and don't act stupid. I think this is one of the reasons why a number of our young people find themselves into trouble, simply because they do not know how to react to them being stopped. And yes, I think that it's important that we as community leaders and as elected officials too need to play our part in terms of educating our young people on how to deal with your being stopped. And I think this current mayor, we know his stance on stop and frisk, but at the end of the day, I think we as community leaders need to do our part in the educating of our young people.
So I'd like to add on to that. I think when you mentioned how some folks, from where they're at, they may use their hands and whatnot. And that's their culture, right? And I think it's important that we train our folks or teach our folks to survive the encounter, and that is, basically living beyond that encounter with the police. But along with that, we also have to be able to hold the police accountable. I don't think that the problem of kids being stopped and frisked or being wrongfully shot down are the fault of the people being shot down or wrongfully stopped and frisked. I think the police need to be held accountable for that. And I think, through the Community Safety Act that Councilman Williams had a big role in getting passed, there's oversight on the police here in New York City through the federal government, and that's a step in terms of holding those authorities accountable. I have difficulties accepting that we should sort of like change our culture to fit the people who are sort of like in our communities. I think if you're in our communities supposed to protect and save, you should be able to sort of acclimate yourself and acculturate yourself and understand our culture.
Here's another question.
I have a few questions, but they're all grouped together. So we talked about making sure that the generations above us know how to interact with youth, but sometimes they don't know how to talk. And I know I grew up in a Jamaican household, and we focus on the problem. That's what, you solve the problem by focusing on the problem. So how can we provide them with the resources on how to speak to young people? And also, going to the young people, they're not necessarily in school all the time. So having someone coming to a school, are you kind of speaking to people who are not necessarily dealing with that kind of situation? And how do we reach out to young people who are necessarily in the streets? And how can we, like you said, walk up to them in love and talk to them in a way that they don't feel like we're talking down to them? And I also wanted to know, what resources can you give someone like myself? Because I don't know how to speak to someone who's dealt with a tough lifestyle. I'm one of the fortunate people who've had 2 parents in my home, and I don't want to come across as being like hoity-toity, but I want to be able to speak to a person and let them know that I'm here for them, and I want to help bring them up.
Could I answer your third question? Because I get that a lot. I get you're bougie and you're uppity and you're this and you're that. I went to Hampton University, but I did not grow up with a silver spoon. I have people who have been incarcerated, and I have people with PhDs in my family, like a lot of minority families, right? So I can come from both sides. I can go street on you, and I can go intellectual for you, right? So what I found, because it's, especially for women, because I know we haven't gotten a chance to speak a lot about women on this panel. There's a lot of men on this panel, but women deal with certain things as well. Because the street hollers, I have to talk about that. That is a problem, and I would address that on another panel. But the third question, I would say, come to the person again, not as, oh, let me help you, but as, I'm genuinely a friend to you. Have a conversation, spark something. Oftentimes, I would find, hey girl, I love your shoes, and we just become friends. You start to learn more things about them. When you relate to people on a human level that has nothing to do with social economic, it has nothing to do with, oh, you're at-risk youth, let me help you. No one likes that, because I know I had peers, again, from all sides of life. So I would say, come to them. Also, I'm a fan of using social media and digital to be an advocate. So I share articles. Look, I have uncles and aunts, for instance. I have an uncle who served time, and that's all he knows. All he knows is street life. I know we're on camera. I'm not mentioning any names. I don't want my granny calling me and saying, you mentioned the bad people in my family, but it's okay. I'm relating with you guys, you know. And I still send him articles from Black Enterprise, because I know that there is something in him, maybe a spark might come up. And that could just be the only way that I can relate to him. If I were to come to him and say, you need to do this, you need to do that, he just turns it off. You know, it turns him off. So you have to find a way to relate to someone where they are and be human and a genuine friend about it.
Even guys from the streets have dreams. You know, I remember one of my dreams was that one day I'll be in Black Enterprise.
Mine too.
I'm serious though, because when I was, I'm coming to get that. That was one of the books, magazines that we was allowed to receive inside the prison system, right, Marlon? We get a lot of So it was always, but I didn't know what the talent was. I was a child that didn't really have a want to be when I was a child. I didn't want to be anything. I just became what I became. But to answer the sister's question about the kids, they're not all in school. And one of the things we do, and Pastor Ashley has been in the street with us, and Marlon, who comes from the SOS, which is Save Our Streets, these are organizations, these are people who actually are in the streets 1, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And this is the work that we do. This is the work that's actually not being tallied and counted and paid attention to. And it's us going out there and seeing who's hanging out in the streets. Even with Cavi, responding to a shooting, and going, once that person is shot, going to talk to their homies in the hood, and figuring out what we could do to help them and bring down their level of retaliation. So it's not necessarily just the schools, like you spoke about. It's about getting out in them streets and finding those people who know how to talk to them and interact with them. Also, one of the things that we've been talking about, working on, was educating and taking adults through trainings, right? And role playing and getting you the ability to respond to, you know, these interactions. It's sort of like if you're in a sales job and you're trying to pitch something to somebody that you're selling, and you gotta be quick with them rebuttals. If your rebuttal ain't quick, you'll throw that person off. And it's the same thing. You know, these kids are like that. For an example, speaking of St. Germain said about the young person with the pants down. I see it all the time, you know, and it bothers me. You know, even when I was running around like that, my pants wasn't that low. You know, it's like, how did it get that low? You know? So what I do, one of the things that I do, I pride myself in doing, is being just as them, even though I made the change in my life. And I still wear the things that they wear, the things that gravitate towards their attention. For example, you know, you got your $200-$300 belts. It may be a Louis belt. I wear a Gucci belt. You know, the jeans they like right now is True Religion. I got a pair of True Religions on now, right? and
Black Enterprise.
Yeah, you know, Black Enterprise. But when they see me though, and I'm talking to them, and I speak about, like, yo, bro, what you doing? What you talking about? Your pants. What's up with your pants? They have no answer. You know, I say, well, look, let me show you something. I got the same belt you got on and the same pants, and look where my pants is at. And I still got swag. You know what I'm saying? I'm still, you know, ladies, and I give them a different perspective. I say, the ladies like the guys with their pants up, right? They don't like that no more. That's whack. You know what I'm saying? And this throws them off. It makes them rethink what they're doing. It goes back to what our approach is when we're approaching someone, regardless if it's in a youth or an adult. If you approach that person based on something that they relate to, like she said, it could be a nice pair of shoes, then that person, guard will go down. But if we're so quick to attack, you know, so we gotta get away from the attack of our community and begin to sympathize and empathize all in the same subject, and get them to understand that there are people out here who will come out 2-3 in the morning just to hear what's troubling them, what pains they're going through. And that's just the best way to do it. And so we constantly look for people that wants to do that. It doesn't necessarily have to be somebody who can come out 2 o'clock in the morning. It could be just what she said. You know, sharing a positive quote online. You know, you see something on Facebook. This was just recent. I'm sorry, but there was a picture of a guy. It was his mugshot, and it's supposed to have been a good, handsome brother. I don't know, because that's not my preference. Everyone saw it? Yeah, he had the green eyes that I always wanted when I was a kid, right? And, you know, the good light-skinned brother, you know, caramel's better, but you know, there was so many likes and shares on a mugshot. And I'm sure it wasn't the guys liking and sharing his mugshot. It might be a couple, but, you know. But the point is, the things that we are quick to share and like are things that do not help the issues in our community. And this is where everyone part comes in at. When you see something that means something that you know is going to help, then we got to start pushing that. All right?
I think just quickly is that, you know, we have to meet young people where they're at. That's one thing we have to understand. So if the young person is on a corner, what I do is I meet them in the corner. You know, if I'm on my way to work, I stop for a second, I talk to them, I ask them how's school going, I ask them to pull up their pants, and I ask them about basketball. And, you know, sometimes I tell them, hey, look, my hand skills are still fast, I can still beat you up. It's just trying to break the ice with them sometimes, and, you know, they open up to me. And the second thing is that children do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. That's a quote by Frederick Douglass. So you can know all the things in the world, and as adults sometimes, you know, we approach kids like, hey, we know it all. We're just gonna tell you what to do. Well, unfortunately, this generation really don't take things like that from adults. They don't take what you're gonna tell them to do. They want you to approach them and talk to them and trying to help them solve problems, trying to help them do better, not just come and talk down to them saying, hey, oh, you a thug, or you this, you that, pull up your pants, or why you not in school, you know, they're not going to listen to that. So I think it's very important that we approach them with respect, and we let them know that, look, we understand you and we're trying to help you, and then they're gonna open up to us. So, you know, if you have elderly people in your house, I think some of the things you can teach them is that, look, grandma or grandpa or mommy, you know, when we approach these young people, we have to let them know that we're not trying to judge them, but we're really trying to help them. So I think that's very helpful.
Okay. Nate, this is the last question we'll have, and then we're going to wrap up the panel.
So, good evening, and all of the work that you all are doing definitely sounds amazing. As a young person myself, oftentimes interacting with younger or young people, something that I always find amiss are structures to support them. And so kind words may be nice, but you know, yesterday on our way home, I ran into someone who I used to mentor, and she was just like, my program closed and I'm looking for a summer job. And so unless I have resources or connections to resources to help place her, my words will only go but so far. And so for people of other backgrounds, what they have in place are resources to protect them in the events that they mess up, they stumble, they fall. And for myself, I'm curious about what resources exist supported by our community, so if someone needs a helpline where they can get quick legal aid advice, if someone that is supportive of them and is just not shuffling them into the system by a different route, to be able to help find placement, whether it's an internship or a decently waged position, where are those things, where is the network for that? Because words are nice, but we do live in a system where there's a power structure in place.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna jump on that one. Actually, throughout the entire day today, from approximately, I think, 9 this morning till about 4:30 until I came here, what I was doing was that I was going to different detention facilities and bringing young people these applications that the court Center for Innovation actually have these internships where they bring young people in and then ask them for the experiences and have them sit on these boards. And then at the end of the program, I think it's a 6-week program, they get a $4,000 stipend and they get free Metro cards and food. So that's what I've been doing all day, and I'm extremely connected to a lot of resources for young people, and I understand that we cannot tell our young people to do well, stay off the streets, if we can't provide them with a positive alternative. I strongly believe in that. As human beings, we're animals. We have to adapt to our surroundings. If I can't eat, if I can't buy nice things, I'm gonna find a way to do it. Either I'm gonna sell drugs or I'm gonna rob people. So, and I agree with you completely. We have to give them opportunities. We have to provide resources to them. Nice words alone is not enough. So I think, again, we have to connect. All of us on this panel and all of you in this room, we have to work together and connect and trying to help these young people get jobs and get internships and trying to keep them off the streets.
Well, just to take that a little bit further, I'm sorry, were you asking for specific resources as well?
Either specific resources or what is in place to develop these resources.
Right, because I was going to say there are programs like sponsorships for educational opportunity, for instance, that have a high school and college. There are a plethora, and maybe because I work in media, I just know where to find them and people come to me. So I would love to share those with you afterwards. Maybe you can give me your email address and I can share those with you, because I have a big passion for that. I know for a fact, even me personally, you could tell me everything in the world, but if I'm unemployed and I have bills to pay, what do you want me to do? You know what I mean? And there are women who will turn to strip clubs and prostitution and all sorts of things because they feel they don't have an alternative, but there are so many alternatives that they're not aware of. So sometimes it could be that doors are shut, but also there are open doors that I don't even know where to find. And I'm saying I as women, you know, just speaking for the ladies, you know. So I would love to share those with anyone who's willing to take my information afterward. And also, I also want to say a combination is this. I'm going to tell a short story about Susan Taylor from Essence magazine. I don't know if everyone's familiar with her, but she actually prided herself in taking on an urban woman as a mentor. And she would bring, when I was an intern there, she was basically a mentor in my head because I just always grew up with Essence in my mind and wanted to work there. But she always had a young lady with her. And this young lady might be from an urban community, might be a little rough around the edges, and she had her in the office with her, you know, shadowing, that sort of thing. So I think that it's a combination of those things because we can't just rely on the existing organizations, those sorts of things, because some of them have certain criteria that may shut some candidates out who have potential but don't qualify. So I think it needs to be a combination of the specific resources, which I'm willing to share with anyone in this room, and also you taking it upon yourself as a leader, as even a high school student, even a middle school student, as an advocate in your organizations, in your corporations, to say, you know what, I'm going to spark a program at my company. I'm going to start an entrepreneurship to mentorship program in my community center or in my church and that sort of thing. I think it needs a combination because, like I said, a lot of the organizations that are here today, and I'm not sure if some of the brothers can attest to this, they are already kind of strapped too. You know, they can do but so much and take but so many people.
Well, actually, I want to comment on, thank you. I want to comment on a couple of things based on your question. One in particular was about support services. So we started the CABI program. We're based out of Kings County Hospital. We're also based in 6 schools around New York City, around Brooklyn. We're going to be expanding to a couple of other schools within Brooklyn. And the reason why we started our programs there is because we were meeting people where they were. You've got young kids that have issues with violence, and they don't go to class, but they go to school, so you meet them there. And in our capacity, what we do is we also provide behavioral health support. You might not call it counseling, but when you sit aside and pull somebody out of class and meet with them in the hallway, that's technically therapy. When you have a group of 20 guys or 30 guys and you're discussing how you deal with issues in your community and with each other, that's technically group therapy. And so you just have a different moniker for that specifically. And all of our respective programs up here provide that type of support. And last but not least is the hospital itself is a huge resource. Kings County, you have the brand new R building, which is not, we used to have the G building over there, and which had a different reputation, but the R building is our behavioral health support center. When we have young people who have experienced major traumas, they begin to do all sorts of things. They self-medicate, and when you're self-medicating on top of having a pre-existing mental health condition, whether it's schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, depression, or oppositional defiant disorder, you wind up becoming even more of those things. If you're depressed, you become even more depressed. If you're bipolar and have these manic episodes, depending on the substance that you're taking and the amount of stress that you're enduring, you become even more manic, and to the point that you can't function and take care of yourselves. And so you wind up seeking a different path in order to make money and take care of you and your families, which is how they wind up in our emergency departments. And so thinking about the behavioral health support systems within the hospital is a huge resource that we provide. SOS with the Crown Heights Mediation also has those resources. All of our respective organizations have access to that. And last but not least, especially since Pastor Monroe's is in front of me, is that the churches, the mosques, the different temples within our communities, we don't call it therapy that they provide, but pastoral counseling is technically therapy. And that is a huge resource that many of our people within our communities don't realize exist. You can't talk to somebody about job placement if they haven't taken care of pre-existing traumas that they've experienced 20 years ago and they're still being haunted by that. So they get a position with a company or corporation, but yet this young person tends to get fired after 1 or 2 months because they tend to blow up because they don't know how to deal with conflict and confrontation. And so the behavioral health support is a huge thing, and we have many people within this room that have those resources. Since we're dealing with the Caribbean community, CAMBA, the Church Avenue Merchants Business Association, has plenty of resources, and if they don't have them specifically there, they can direct you to the facilities that have those resources.
Thank you.
Well, let him ask his question, guys.
Oh.
Yeah, it's
I'm
not
sorry,
really.
you actually just jumped this young lady who was waiting too, but we don't want to have a riot up in here. Quick question. We're a peaceful riot, a peaceful demonstration, non-violent. How much more time? Okay.
I just wanted to start by saying, our communities, whether it be Black, Hispanic,
Come up to the mic.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to start by saying, we really have to put this perspective on that. Our communities, Black, Hispanic, Caribbean, whatever, we didn't invent crime, we really need to put that mindset on. Just like you said, economic opportunities, education, those are the solutions to the problems, okay? We have to stop looking at these kids and their color and really think in terms of how do we give them what they need to, survive in the world. But also, there was an initiative, I'm not familiar with the names or the details, but the former mayor, won't mention names, he came up with an initiative for
Oh, the Young Men's
The
Initiative.
Young Men's
Yes,
Initiative.
young mentorship. So I'm not, familiar with how it works. I just remember the press release.
Well, I'm sorry.
I don't know if.
Yeah, we
I'm
actually.
sure maybe some of you are.
Our
part of-
organizations actually have received support, and some of our organizations have received some sort of support from the Young Men's Initiative to improve. Some, not, there's definitely a need for more, but that's at least the initial platform, and hopefully there'll be other initiatives that are going to come in place. But we can talk a little bit more specifically about those financial resources later.
Well, to add to that, I remember seeing an article about Borough President Adams, to add to that.
Mhm.
And I had a lot of respect for this idea. The idea was that giving $50 million to community-based organizations to kind of go into the community and work directly with the kids. If you give those organizations money, I mean, you're definitely employing kids, you're employing people. You've already lifted the community. I mean, there are so many ways. We need to put money to these things in the community. That's what it is. I mean, I see buildings going up every day. I could think even in Weeksville, if you're familiar.
Live around the corner.
Right. So the museum went up. The museum, $35 million. The fundraiser was at, the Mandarin Hotel. I mean, the project is right next, it looks like a project, I don't know if it literally is, but it's right there next to it. I don't know if the school got any of that money. I don't know if the people right next door got any of it. It's about the money, it's about the economic opportunities. And then again, in the school, that is a great opportunity. I mean, if we can, really formalize it, just like you say, you guys are reaching out to people in the schools, maybe 4 times a year, I forget what they call them, the general meeting in the auditorium. You people like yourselves let it be established that maybe 4 times a year you get an opportunity to reach out to people and, change your mindset. Maybe they don't know, or some kind of positive way to go into the schools with more than education, because definitely I believe people talk about those kids and them, and every generation is an opportunity for change. You give them a good education, you show them the right way, and problem solved.
Right. Thank you. Actually, we can take questions privately at the end, but we have to wrap up right now. And I apologize for that. We're going to be hanging around for a few minutes, so you can definitely address us after that. But a few things. One, we've talked about a lot of things, from community mobilization, from accessing resources, from behavioral health support, mental health support, making sure that we can collaborate, the power of utilizing social media, and making sure that we can get young people involved. The main thing we want to leave with you is to just do it. Just like Nike says, just do it. Don't sit and talk about it. Don't sit there and have extensive dialogue about it. You have to start initiating and take thought from actually this theoretical concept into something that you can actually have that's tangible, something that you can work with, and something that you can use to mobilize young people. That's the whole purpose of today's discussion, is to figure out how we can more effectively share ways and just take those shared concepts so that we can mobilize young people for the